All right, folks. Thank you for joining us here at Paranormal Roundtable. Sorry, I'm in the middle of eating a stabilized bar. I need to eat that for nourishment. Had to try to eat something. I didn't get a chance to. I was so busy today. Running all over Hell's Half Acre. This looks good, but it is very, very sour. My wife keeps me drinking it, so for my gout. How's everybody doing tonight? We got a great show to plan for you. We hope that it's great. It may suck. You never know. It might just suck.
Well, even then, it's still good compared to a lot of other stuff out
even
there.
Our worst shows are better.
Yeah.
I had somebody who told me that they were praying that I would fail. And I actually was kind of upset at first. And then I realized they were like, they don't pray to the God I pray to. And I was like, you're praying to some other, okay.
Yeah, they're praying to like an oak tree or something.
Yeah, they're praying to
or
something.
like dirt or the wind.
Whatever. No, it was actually, they have a very specific God they pray to, but I was like, that's not my God. So I was like, yeah, I don't care what that guy thinks.
Good luck with that.
And if you're praying for somebody to fail, I mean, honestly, does that, I mean, do you think that they're evil? Is that what you think they should fail? Or, I mean, what is this guy thinking? Anyway, we got to pray for him. Folks, first thing I want to do is just give you the coordinates. Josh Turner at PRTpodcast.com. Josh Turner at PRTpodcast.com. It was a little wet outside, and so it rained a little bit and got in my hair, but it's okay. I'm good. That's not going to stop me. That guy's God is the rain god, so he's trying to get me wet, soak me down, so I couldn't make it up the stairs, but I made it.
Oh, yeah, I saw. Saw in the middle of it. You bowed your head.
I'm not joking. He literally says he prays to Enlil. Yeah. And I was like, are you Sumerian? And he's like, I just know about get this. He says he knows about the nature of reality. Don't I say that all the time? That's my line. I'm like, I turned into like Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty on him. I'm like, really? That's your line? That's my line. Okay. Yeah. He's trying to do reverse psychology on me. Like, no.
How many realities
Bugs Bunny invented reverse psychology. Okay. So
are there out there? Because there are a lot of people seem to figure it out, I think.
They have all the answers. You have all the answers, but he watches the show so he can criticize me. And he said something about last week's show that I had even forgotten. I was like, wow, you know more about the show than I do. Like these evil layer that they have where they're just like drawing stuff up.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom.
Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom. They're like, what are we going to do about this? There's like a mantis guy and an alien and a disappearing Bigfoot,
There's always at least one mad scientist.
They're like, Squatch man, stop cloaking.
Yeah.
This is what got us.
Turn us on to our spiritual nature. This cannot go unchallenged.
Paranormal Roundtable has become a real threat. Well, we have the shadow government on our side. When he tries to record, we just turn off his equipment.
You two, man. Have you been doing your job?
I imagine he would be like, yes, I have. What about you, Facebook man? Yes, I have been doing the algorithms. Short-circuiting. I'm sorry, folks. I had to eat some ginger. I just taste that taste in my mouth. So, anyway, we got to show our guest is coming on early tonight because he's in England. And I'll just tell you, it's Paul Sinclair.
The one and only.
He did the Wolflands documentary. We're going to talk to him. Here's the weird thing, okay? Everybody we tried to record with this week, it fell through.
Mm-hmm. Day by day.
That has never happened before. 4 interviews from beginning to now, and every one of them fell through. That has never happened to us ever.
Yeah, and it was like entirely like weird situations too. Like, you know,
It's all circumstances. beyond our
weather,
control.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like nothing that we could do anything about. We just had to deal with it. But
It was crazy. Like with what's it, Todd Tate. I mean, you know, he gets this huge flat, like his brim is bent and tore up, and he can't make it. You know, and so by the time he would be able to, you know, it just we couldn't coordinate it. And the weirdest one was Melville Ketchum
Yeah.
because the equipment malfunctioned first.
Well, yeah, because first it was in my opinion, it can be written off as like, oh, the power just happened to go out, because it wasn't the power that went out at first. It was just the computer that went out. Nothing, like the computer completely shut off, and we don't use this computer for anything except for this show. Like there's
It's a
nothing
very
on there
high-powered computer.
that will interfere with or has ever interfered with our ability to record. So it was just the computer is shut off, and then I restarted it, and then the power
we
for-
get
for the
15
whole-
minutes in,
yeah, and then the power for the whole office complex
goes
goes
back
out,
on, and we try it again. 30
Yeah.
minutes in, and then it does
and then
it
it goes
again.
out again.
So we got about 40 minutes worth of stuff with her, and
It's just weird how it was just the computer first. It was isolated to that, and then the whole office complex goes out.
thank you for that donation, GFA,
oh wow,
DJ Tyler, and Barry,
thank you so much, Liberty.
and Liberty.
Very generous.
Thank you so much. In honor of my dear wife, 52, she passed away in March, and this is her birthday. Oh,
Oh man, sorry.
well, Liberty was
We would've
really
loved
fun
to have
hanging
her.
out with you at the conference. I really enjoyed it. It was a good
I think
time.
Liberty won the katana.
No, he won a Linda Godfrey autograph book.
Oh, okay.
I would rather have that than the katana. Even though the katanas were worth a lot of money.
Katanas are
can't
cool,
get
but you
those
can't
books
get those.
autographed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can
get
get
those
more
books.
katanas. You can't get any more Linda Godfrey autographs.
People say I'm not a nice guy. Come on, I gave 2 Linda Godfrey books away, autographed. The Beast of Bray Road.
Mm-hmm.
And people talk trash. It's like people say, though, folks, you ain't going to please everybody. But people like Liberty and Larry, and they're the ones that matter. You know, those are the people that matter. Everybody else, you know, you guys are here in the chat. Y'all the ones that matter. All these other people that just talk a bunch of trash, you know, it's whatever. It's like that in every arena I've been in the fight game, or you're downtown running a nightclub, or you're doing a security business. People make up rumors and they lie. Oh, they lie. We had this one guy who was trying to snake accounts from us, and he went from client to client. He was busy. Like, he went to like 25 of our clients, making up a story. Just busily making up a story. And, I got him back. I can't talk about how I did it, but I got him back. It was, and then he goes around crying about that. It's like, they cry out as they strike you. I'm like, oh, you know, like, woe is me. I'm over here punching this guy and I'm crying.
Somebody get an ambulance, but not for me.
The person that I'm mistreating. But, you know, folks, I look at us as like, we're that group of people. We're one step ahead. We're always one step ahead. I've always been that guy. You know, I was talking about Bugs Bunny earlier, just kind of like Bugs Bunny. Like, I've always just kind of been one step ahead of my enemies. They're always a day late and a dollar short, and they get so mad, and they just, you know. But all they got to do is apologize for their shenanigans, and I would just forgive them and move on and ask for forgiveness from God and go on with yourself. But they can't do that. They got to just double down, triple down, and just keep rolling the dice. Like, oh, I'm eventually going to get this guy. No, you're not. You're just going to match wits with somebody that you can't defeat. And in the end, you just need to stop. Just stop. Please. For the love of God. It gets embarrassing to a certain point. It's like, you know. And then when they're out there spinning around in space, they're like, oh, it's all your fault. No, you could have not done it, which you did. You could have just left things alone, left people alone. But that's what happens. Folks, I want to ask you a question. I've had some weird stuff coming to us lately about the Mandela effect. I don't know if it's the Mandela effect, or if you want to call it that. Call it, I don't know what you would call it. And I was talking to Nelly about it earlier. You guys weren't involved in the conversation, so that's good that I can ask you cold, people are sending messages to us. I don't know if you've had a chance to read any of these where they're seeing what they believe or what I believe. Either they're saying it or I'm looking at it and I'm saying it, that the Mandela effect is happening before their eyes. Like I had a guy in... Go ahead.
I think I saw a message like that. Actually, someone sent me something similar where they said they were looking at like a sign or it was like a billboard or something, and they turned their head away, and then when they looked back at it, it was literally like it just changed entirely. So is it similar to something like that?
Okay, for example, real quickly before Paul comes on, I'll give you a couple stories, and these are brief enough to throw in there before Paul comes on. We got 20 minutes. We had a guy, he goes by Whiskey Powerbomb. Okay, or Whiskey Power Ball, or I don't know, I got to go look. He's on my email. I think I forwarded it to you in that group thread, but his story was really interesting. He believes that him and a car dealer I think he said Killeen. He was in Killeen, and he was looking at a vehicle, and it was a few years ago. And then it happened again recently, not with that same situation, but he was at church and he saw something. So he began having an interesting conversation with his pastor about it. When he was in Killeen, he was in the military. And he had told me, and I think he was somebody who had originally reached out to Armando, but he had told me personally that he was talking to a car at a car dealership. I think it was a Ford or a Chevy dealership, whatever. He was looking for a truck. And I know that it was a Ford or a Chevy because I remember saying to him that at that time, I had a Titan XD. I had 2 trucks. And he says, well, I don't want a foreign truck. I want an American-made truck. And I said, well, that's good. But, the Tundras are actually made here in America, and so are some of the Titans. But, he wants to buy American. I get it, even though it's weird because some of them aren't even made here. It's like the opposite. But the parts, whatever. It's all depends on your preference, And I think he was being honest, and he said that he was looking at a vehicle, and he was looking at the rims, and he liked the rims. So then when they went and drove around, and that was not his main selling point, but it helps that if the wheels look nice, So he got out, and he was with his youngest son, who at the time was like, I think 12. And they're like, oh, the rims are cool. They go for a drive in the truck. They come back, and they look, and the rims literally were different. And then when he talked to the guy that was in the vehicle with him when they were test driving it, the guy says, well, these rims are really, and when they got out, they looked, they were like, well, maybe this is a different truck. So he went and, he was like, no, this is the truck that we looked at on the lot, and then we came back out to it. And he said he looked right at the tires, and he kind of kicked the tire,
Where was this at?
And at Killeen, either Killeen or Temple. I got to go back and look. It's an older email, but the reason I dug it up was because I think it was originally given to Armando. Yeah. And maybe you, Tony, because you and Armando did a lot of cases together. But I put it in that thread on the group thing or whatever. What's weird, though, is that that's not the first time somebody's told me that. This one guy told me that he had the VIN number, everything. He gave the guy the number to his vehicle, and it showed on there that it was a dark blue. And then him and his wife got into an argument about it, and he was like, my vehicle, the blue on my vehicle was different. So him and his son remembered it a certain way, and then he said that's not correct. It was, when they were talking about the vehicle, trading it in, he said, well, we took pictures of it, and it was like a metallic blue or an electric blue or something like that. And then the wife was like, no, you have it was dark blue. He said it was light blue. And it was a backup vehicle he had, And he said it was being stored at his mother's place. And when they go out there, this was actually in Kentucky. And so he's like, I go back out there to get the truck, to get the title, and go and trade it in for another work vehicle. And the color, he goes, the color was, my wife was right. Her and my daughter remembered it differently than me and my son, which was kind of weird because the 2 guys remembered it, and these weren't little kids. His kids were older teenagers, 17 and 19. So how is it that the women remembered it in one color and the men remembered it another color? And then when he got there, his mother was like, told him something very weird. She said that she went to bed talking to his dad or his stepdad, and the next day, the color of the truck had changed. She's like, well, you don't need to argue because something weird happened. She said there was a storm back in March, and she said that when she came back out, the truck, the color of the truck, they were driving back from the grocery store, and they had gotten caught in a thunderstorm, not like a flood or anything like that, but it was interesting that it was an electrical storm. And she's like, is it just me or does Jack's truck look like it's a different color? And her husband was like, yeah, it is weird. So it didn't surprise them when they showed up, and him and his wife weren't viciously fighting. They were like jokingly taking jabs at each other. And she's like, oh, you can't remember the color of your truck.
Getting old man, something like that.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah. And it was weird because the wife and the daughter remembered it a certain way, but him and his son remembered it another way. Now, to take it a step further, the mother remembered it being the way he remembers it. But the stepdad argued kind of on the side of the wife, and the daughter said, no, it's always been like that. So you can't say it was all a gender thing. It was just random. I was taken aback by that, and he showed me a picture of the vehicle. I mean, I don't have a picture to, I can't say, well, this is the original, and this is the other one. But the fact that it seemed to have changed color, at least according to the mother, and maybe it was suggested to her husband, I thought that was weird. I thought that was really weird, and it's not like something like a really long, drawn-out story, but it is food for thought. And then there are people telling me that there was a billboard in San Antonio that changed, and this guy got 3 or 4 people to come forward and tell me that they remembered it differently. It was in the North San Antonio, and I was like, that's weird. Different color, it was like blue and yellow, and then it became red and silver. And it was like the very next day, the exact same thing, but the lettering was different.
That's really weird because the story I was talking about earlier was that this guy said I think he was in New Jersey, and he was driving to visit his sister or his mom or like a family member, and to get to there he passed by like this old rundown restaurant, and they had a billboard there too that was like I think he was real worn down, like the paper was falling off, but he said he remembered seeing like a toucan or a parrot sitting there, and then like there's a bunch of flowers and stuff. So he sees that specifically, and then he goes to visit his family member, and as he's coming back he goes and looks at it again, but now it's a toucan, and instead of flowers it's like a bunch of what is it? It's just like a bunch of colorful spots, like that like kind of 70s design where it kind of so like lava lamp kind of design. So like he stopped and he looked at it and he goes, that makes absolutely no sense, because like I remember seeing the parrot right there because the little beak, and its beak was like open, he was telling me, and then the toucan had its mouth closed and was looking down like that, and he goes, it was like in 2 different entirely positions, like there was no way I could have mistaken the 2 of them. And this was the same road, but I was like, well, maybe there's another restaurant down the road that has the exact same sign somehow. He kept driving, and you didn't see anything else like that. But yeah, he said like it just weirded him out for a little bit because he was like, maybe I'm going crazy because like I specifically remember seeing that sign a certain way, and as I'm leaving, it's totally different.
Yeah, and I got a story from Taiwan. There was a person that used to live in Taiwan, and they've been here for 20 years or whatever, but their dad was a soldier, military, and it was so weird, man. I mean, like and this guy, what it was a female, what she told me was that there was an uncle that they had who had ended up going to the mental hospital because he began to spell their last name differently and write differently, and said that and everybody in the family was like, no, this isn't correct. And he said, no, this is how our name is spelled. And when he refused to go back to spell, at least for them, to go back to writing and remembering things the way that they all remembered it and the way that they wrote, it was like not correct. And that guy was very stubborn, and he ended up going into a mental hospital. It was her great uncle. So she doesn't know if maybe this had something to do with it. Maybe it's something that she inherited. But her dad had told her the years that he was in the military. And she was like, that's not correct. And she remembers it a totally different way. And then her mother kind of backed her up and said, yeah, I think he's wrong about his dates, but this guy should know. So then they agreed on the dates that he was where they were staying at near this base. And then he got some sort of paperwork, and they looked at it, and he was correct. But they were very adamant that these dates were not correct. In particular, there was a family vacation that they took. And it just makes you think, like, I don't know, man, no matter how sure you are of yourself, somebody disputes it, it could be, I don't know. It's not only is it a freaky thing, but it's kind of scary too. Because I get bombarded with stories of the Mandela effect, and I don't know what to make of them. I mean, I'll tell people, and not sometimes people get offended too, because I'm the last person that's trying to pass judgment or be ugly about somebody's stories. Because if you know what you saw, you know what you saw. You don't need me proselytizing to you to the opposite. I'm not trying to convert you to believe that you're wrong. But one of the things I do say to people, because you got to make sure that it is correct what you're saying, and I tell people, I'm like, are you sure? I mean, like, are you really sure? Now, is it possible that this? And this one guy kind of got aggravated. He's like, I've been living here for 17 years, 27 years, whatever. Got pretty aggravated. And I said, look, first of all, you contacted me. I'm trying to help you. You have to be able to rule that out. And if you have a family member that can back up what you're saying, and then it gets weirder, though, when they get a family member, and then another family member says they remember it differently, and then you're like, okay. I'm not here to play Family Feud. I'm just trying to figure out what you're talking about. And it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's definitely weird about the Mandela effect is definitely the fact that there's so much chance of human error. Like there is a chance that someone just forgot or maybe misremembered. But then it's it definitely makes you question your own mind, which I think is like the psychological terror of it. Is that you can't really trust what you see, hear, or believe nowadays because
memory is so hard of it.
It'll change, and then it's like, well, did I change it, or did something in the world change it to where now something's going on and I can't recognize it, or
Some of these though are so blatant though. The Monopoly guy in his monocle, or like that song on
Boardwalk Empire.
Boardwalk Empire.
That Eddie Cantor song.
That Eddie Cantor song. I don't give a crap. I mean, there's some things that I'm just sitting there going like. And I've talked to people in my hometown, and they remember football games differently and things. Just I don't know, man. It's hard to wrap your mind around. And you don't really know. I mean, I don't know what to think of some of this stuff. But so real quickly, I got a Bigfoot encounter I wanted to share with you before we get on with the show. Go further. I thought this one was kind of interesting. And it kind of goes along with what I've said about these things throwing rocks. Not that it's funny what happened, but they do throw rocks. And this one was out of Virginia. Bless you.
Thank you.
And this person was driving along. It was about they said it was 2:45 in the morning. Wife and they were traveling, and they were heading to North Carolina to go visit a sister, or his sister-in-law, her sister. And it was last summer, and it was getting late, and she was supposed to take over the duty of driving at this point. And I guess she decided to fall asleep. And so he was like, I was pretty aggravated. He was kind of cantankerous about that. And so he was like, I don't know, man. Like when it first happened, I don't know. It was weird. He said that, he was so aggravated that she was sleepy at a time where she shouldn't have been, because the plan was for her to sleep and then him to drive and then blah, blah, blah. And then they could get there and a quicker time or whatever. And I'm sorry, it was South Carolina. They're heading to South Carolina. And he said I was pretty aggravated. So when the rock hit my vehicle, I thought, what now? Here's the weird thing, okay? Unless there were multiples of these, he hears something hit the side of his car. He looks over and he sees this reddish-brown creature hunched over, looking Neanderthalic as he described it in the face. Very Bigfoot, ape-like. And usually, when somebody gives us this, and we get a lot of these, and they say, well, I saw a Bigfoot on the side of the road. You're just kind of like, okay, so did a million other people. But it's hard to just make a story on the show for what you saw that was that small, or short, I should say, of an encounter. He sees this and he thinks, I shouldn't. He goes, I shouldn't have thought this. I thought it was kind of humorous though. But he said, I shouldn't even be awake for this. I should be the one in the passenger side. Instead, I have to look at the devil, as he called it, standing on the side of the road. And he goes, I know that the thing is the one that threw the rock at my vehicle. He says, so I get further down and I get around this curve, and another one hits. And at the first one, he was really aggravated because his wife didn't even wake up. So then he's like, honey, and she's like, and he's like, something just hit. And right when he says that, he's like, literally, it hit like right there where, how you have the windshield and that piece, I don't even know what you call it. He describes it. He's like where the piece that goes between the front windshield and the passenger side window.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know what the piece is called, and he didn't give me a name. He just said that piece right there. Something hit, something hit that dead on, and woke her up, and she was like, "Whoa!" And then they look, and he sees the same. He said it was the same exact creature. Now I said, I asked him this. Okay, his name's Joel, and I said, Joel, let me ask you, and then there again, I'm not trying to doubt. When I ask these questions, folks, if you send me a story and I ask you that, I'm not trying to pass judgment on you. I just need to get as many details as possible, and maybe if you made a mistake. He's like absolutely 100,000, 10% positive that being, that, hairy turd, as he called it, threw the first rock. And I said, how do you? He goes, dude, it was identical. It was an exact copy. And I told him, I said, there are Bigfoot that can be in the same families, and they look the same, but he was like, I don't think that's what this was. He said this thing, I believe, and according to what he wants to believe, is that it somehow teleported and moved over across the road and threw it again. But I asked him this question. I said was there a third rock thrown? He said no. I said, so could it have been identical Bigfoot creatures?
Yeah, because it would
Very distinct, the features, the way he described it.
it would have just kept throwing rocks if it could teleport, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would think.
Why would it all of a sudden
Why
stop?
would it just be so? Were they twins? On that note, I've heard this. Now, I had a guy that was up in Spokane area. Now, if you know anything about Washington, I've spent time up there. A beautiful place. Spent time in Oregon and in Northern California, all over California. I've spent time in Utah, everywhere. One of the things that I noticed about and I got this story a long time ago, and it's not a real long story, but a guy was walking through the woods. He was hiking. And this wasn't the Spokane. I'm sorry. This was near Tacoma. Sorry. My bad. The guy was hiking, and he saw one Bigfoot, like creature, coming down the trail. And when it saw him, it stopped. And it kind of looked both ways. And then either these creatures were perfectly in a straight line, and they were all identical size, shape. Every single thing was absolutely the sime. One came out this way, and one came out that way, behind him. But it looked like they were all three at the same time. And I didn't know what to tell this guy when he told me this. What he didn't tell me is a thing he sent to me. And I just said, that's weird. And if you're somebody who sent me a message and I don't really know what to think, you probably the first time we interacted, I'm just giving you like a wow or a whoa or weird, whatever. Then we start talking, messaging back and forth. Never spoke to the guy on the phone. And when I actually responded the last time, he never responded back. He probably went on to another show and gave this story. You probably heard it before. I don't know. It happens. So it's not going to offend me if you go somewhere else with your story. You know, I'll tell it, and somebody else can tell it, or you can tell it. It's all depends on you. But what was really odd about that was that it was almost like that cookie cutter, you know, and then we've heard that with Dogman too. And these things will split off into like 3 different creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there going like, what is going on here? Why are there 3 different Bigfoot that look exactly the same? Brownish to chocolate looking fur. And I say fur because this was more ape-like than, you know. Now, one of the things, I'm not an aper, but I do believe that there is a physical Bigfoot, but I think it's not the way we think it is. It's like what Ken Garrett said, we can't comprehend it. But I'm not discounting that there could be these creatures that live within the earth, and I believe that there is this trickster, shapeshifter quality to some of these things too. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm one of those people that's kind of in the middle of the road where I think anything can go. I really do. I think anything can happen at any time. And I've just seen and heard way too much to ever say that there's just one reason or one cause for everything. Although I do think there is an underlying connection. And I think it all has to do with the nature of reality. Yeah. Okay. So, whatever. Guy that stole my saying said that I stole it from him. I'm like, I never even met you, dude. But maybe we did meet in an alternate reality, and that's why he thinks that.
Maybe that's where you got it from.
Yeah. Maybe when I built my time machine, I went back in time, I stole all your work because it was so amazing, and then I came back and I made this show.
I think what happened was that sometime way, way in the past, he saved your life. And then as, you know, he was holding out your hand.
I think he saved my life from my future self that was actually
grab
living
you.
in the present.
He told you. It's in the, you know, I saved you from the nature of reality.
Ghost of future, past, present.
Kind of thing.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just said that. I actually went back in time to say that because I didn't know what to say at the moment.
Well, thank you,
So
hero.
you basically you broke the space-time continuum specifically to
Multiple
steal this one guy.
Exactly.
I think that's why
ideas.
I do it multiple times a day, though.
and his slogans and his sayings.
Mhm.
I think he worked really hard to make that collider happen just so that this will happen right here.
I'm a known space villain in alternate
I mean,
realities.
look, it's really
Everybody
his
knows.
fault because if he were that smart, this wouldn't have happened. He should have been smarter, and then not allowed you to travel through space and time to steal his ideas. He
Work
should have
smarter, not
planned for that and expected the unexpected.
Yeah,
Everybody knows.
Clearly, this guy didn't read The Art of War.
that's right.
Everybody knows.
Or he did.
the villain
and
wolf.
then he didn't
Well, then his
consort
reading
with.
comprehension is not.
He read it
good.
in the future, dude. That's the problem.
Yeah.
After
didn't
you said that,
understand.
he read it.
Yeah.
Okay, then he has to go back in time and tell his past self to read The Art of War. Then he's reading it, then he's ready to go.
I mean, well, just think if we didn't have this hero saving us, we'd have to fight Wolf with just the brother and sister coalition of space or whatever.
Zach Coulter had a good question here. It says, or he says, "Hey guys, love your work." Okay, where'd it go? I just lost it.
I got it. You said, "Hey guys, love your work. I sent you guys a story. I was wondering how long it would take to maybe hear it on the podcast."
Okay, which way did you send it? Because I have 2 different emails, and I have a messenger, and I have Instagram, and I get stories from all of those. And then sometimes people will actually type out an entire story, which has happened in a group. And then they're like, "You didn't see it? I put it in the group." And send it to me, please. Okay, I'm not trying to get other people from not seeing it. That's not my thing. I don't care. Other people can use it too. The way I do it is different than anybody else. They can tell it however they want. So just, we all have our own unique, thumbprint that we put on these things. But just
It's important that we get the stories
Yeah.
correctly so that we know what to tell them.
go to Messenger and hit me up on Messenger, either Instagram or Facebook, if you've already tried sending it through the email and I didn't receive it. And then we can go from there. What's the story about, Zach? Another thing, too, people are welcome to come on the show and tell their own stories, but a lot of times they just want me to tell it. So, hey, Bernard, how's it going? everybody needs to thank Sugar Britches for being such a good moderator and doing what she does. Folks, do me a favor. Now we got all these people in the chat here. I need to tell you, Lyle Blackburn is asking for people to go and check out his podcast he has on YouTube. He wasn't putting them on YouTube, but now he's putting them on YouTube. So he wants some subscribers. So if you could, he does a really good job on his podcast, just like he does on everything else he does. Lyle is a
Man of many talents. How does he have the
he's a
time?
very talented guy, and so if you could show him some love, go to Lyle Blackburn's channel. Look it up, Tony. See if you can look it up real quick.
I got it. I'm on it. It's just under. It's on YouTube under his name, Lyle Blackburn. I'm gonna copy and paste the link directly to his channel in the chat right now.
Make sure to subscribe, guys. I know I am.
Yeah, and then tomorrow we're going to. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to be on with Crypto Normal Encounters with B Moss. We did a impromptu show. I think I was watching her and Abe Cias go, and I like all these collaborations that come out of the conference. And her and Abe were throwing out some good stuff, and I was watching. And they invited me to join about an hour and a half in or so, and so I was on there for the last hour. And Bettina has to work in the morning; she had to go, and I had a lot of things to do the next day too, and so. We talked about it at the end of the night, and we said, why don't we just do a show on Saturday? So I will be on Bettina Moss's show tomorrow night with Abe Cias, and we will be talking about a lot of different things, the spiritual aspect of this, and as well as the physical and the different in-betweens. So if you want to hear more about Dogman, Bigfoot, and all this other stuff that's going on, check me out tomorrow night. I'll be on her show. I'll be there. I think it's going to be. She just sent me the messages. She's going to start. She said it around 8, but I have to eat dinner about 7:30 with some friends, so probably won't get there till about 9. So I'll try to get there about 9, and then we'll do what we got to do. And thank you for subbing to Lyle. Let's show him PRT muscle. Let's show him some strength. Let's show him how we do it. We go over there and we get him the subs he needs. Mm-hmm. Y'all go and support Bettina and Abe, and I'll be on there talking tomorrow night. I always, and Tony knows this, Tony trying to nose through my notes the other day in my study, almost had to power bomb him. Like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to steal. Exactly. That's what he was doing, rubbing his hands. He's like, I was getting a cookie for you. I don't need a cookie.
He's like, luckily I can't read. So it's safe.
He was rubbing a rock over it.
Just wanted to get your blood pressure up. That's it.
No stories to tell anymore.
Well, you were looking for what is it called? A knife, whatever.
Exo.
Yeah. So Nelly had asked you for something, so he runs his chance to run into my study and snoop.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I forgive you. All the fun stuff is in there. It's like my workshop. So Tony's in there, and there are a lot of notes and things and archives of my stories and things that I have collected from people. And that's okay. We're fine with that. But the thing is, we have so much and so many things that we need to go over. You know what I mean? And so I'm over here trying to figure out like who I wanted to do this UAP project with and where to start. And then I started going over all these different people: Rob Yox, Jason Bland, Chris James, Christopher Jordan, of course, Nick Redfern, and then you got Daniel Jones. And I'm just like overwhelmed, James Bartley. And so I just thought, you know what? Let's just interview them all. Let's do it. And then let's do a panel on Zoom and let's get it all going. Let's get this going here. There was so much material that went on in that conference. Now, put the link to the conference on here so they can go and you can rent the conference. It's very, very, very interesting. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it. And
it's 14 hours, guys. So
14 hours.
It's a lot there.
I've actually lost like 6 pounds since I got back from the conference. I've been dropping weight.
We all
like
told
crazy.
you. We all knew you would. I mean, we all knew that conference was basically just stressing you the heck out and keeping that weight on.
Dude, not even hardly eating.
No, I mean, you're basically just starving yourself, drinking not poison, just tart.
Poison.
But just well, basically crap. I mean, it's good for you, but it tastes like crap. So
Yeah, and I wasn't starving myself. I
No,
ate
you-
less because that's my diet, but I wasn't losing. And I think it was just the stress. But now the stress is down a little bit. So what we're going to do, folks, we're going to get Paul Sinclair on here, but we're going to talk about some stuff. We got a lot to go over, and I'm hoping that we're going to get these recordings done next week, right? So we'll have Thursday, probably by next Thursday, we'll be dropping the discussions.
Yeah.
Okay. We have been going through some weird stuff. Like people have been reporting to me weird stuff, and even our friends and family in our day-to-day lives, telling us that all kinds of weird stuff is happening to them. And I guess they come to us because we do a show about weird stuff. It would make sense. I'm like, why are you telling me this? Oh, my show. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. All right. I didn't know my uncle was telling me all this weird stuff. And he's like, you're the weird ass. I don't know what,
Oh, so you want me to fix your toilet? Just
My
'cause
cow
you're a
just
plumber.
exploded and then reconstituted itself. What do I do? I don't know. I mean, I have no experience with this type system. What do I do? Who do I call for help? It's the V to the A to the D-E-R. Oh, that's Vader. Never mind.
Vader.
That's not me.
All I'm surrounded by is death and was it? What I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men.
Yeah. But people call you because you deal with weird stuff, and they think that I'm going to have some kind of answer an hour later, and they're still like, it's not like I can just tell you really quickly. I could theorize, but I tell people watch the show because there's an overarching theme that runs through the show that you will learn from. And so I can't just teach you all of it and just, hey, Barton, what's going on? I can't teach it in just two episodes, But I had a really high compliment that was paid to me by a couple guys at the gym last night. They said that I should be teaching a class at UT. That like, dude, I would take your class if you had a class to teach. So I thought that was cool. This picture of you and Banjo. What is wrong with that dog's eyes? What is going on? That doesn't even look like a dog. That looks like a
He was the
Kelpie.
prize.
He's like an Irish Kelpie, like from mythology.
I think we took that Tuesday when I had
No
to
wonder Lockbeard thinks I'm doing mythology. He saw that picture and thought we were doing Irish mythology.
Well, I had to bring my cryptid out
Channeling is
for show and tell.
is intercrypted. Well, okay, let's call this guy here. Paul's over there going like, good grief. All right, let's see here. I can't type. No, you got it? Okay. His fingers have been hurting so bad. Oh, man, it's quiet. You got to be able to turn it up. There it goes. Well, maybe Paul slept in because it's going to be about 4:30 his time right now.
Yeah, so we have to wait a little bit.
Maybe he's asleep. Well, I just say we do what we do with everybody who just tries to go to sleep. We just keep pestering them until they get up. Just keep going.
If anyone's in England, can you just show up at his house and
Somebody go over there. It's just one little 15-minute city that they're making or whatever that is. Just walk over to his house. They're like, I live in Liverpool. I don't care.
Can you imagine that Paul's in bed just sleeping and he gets nudged awake by like 15 PRT? Hey, you gotta get on.
Well, we have a good following in the UK, man. Somebody said it's 3:40 in the UK. Is that true? Is it 3:40? Is the entire UK one time zone?
Indeed.
Is that what it says? Somebody said, yep. So it's 3:40. Okay, so then we're way off. So then it's not 9:30. My time. I did the same thing to Paul Wallace, both Pauls. We were an hour off on our time. So I only ended up getting to record for 2 hours with Paul Wallace. Well, you know what? Then we have an hour? Like how long is that? It's 10. So then we would be calling him at like 10:30. So we have like 45 minutes to kill. Okay. Anybody have a story that they want to come on and tell? As long as you can tell it correctly, and don't say a bunch of foul bad words. Stuff people do that, you know. One time zone. Thank you, Nina. Okay, it's 3:44. So it's my bad. I'm calling him. Poor guy's probably sleeping. Yes, I am 5 behind, and you guys are 1 hour behind me. 86. Probably. He's probably going like, who the shite is this guy? Like, Artistic Bunny, I have a story. Okay, what is your coordinates? Send it to me through Messenger, Facebook Messenger. It's the easiest way to call. Otherwise, we got to set up Skype and all that to do it. Thank you for that donation, Frank Harrington, which I believe is your wife. Did we miss somebody, or somebody else that donated? I want to make sure I get everybody and thank them. Thank you for your donations. They're not expected, but they are definitely appreciated.
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot.
It's hoping to make up for the money we spent on the conference. Are you still planning to do an uncensored PRT on Vimeo? Yeah, Joe Olin says that. Joe, thank you for that donation, too. Thank you for your donation. Let me ask you a question. Is that... what are you talking about, the conference? Because that is out.
Oh, I think he might be talking about Rumble.
Are you talking about Rumble?
Yeah,
We still don't know because we have so much we got to do right now on this platform. We don't know how or what we're going to do with that. We're waiting for a couple friends of ours who want to do a collaboration and see how it sticks, to kind of judge how many listeners we have over there. And I've been asked, and if you are somebody who has a podcast, I've seen a few people in here. Patricia Gambino, thank you, Harrington. Thank you for that donation in honor of our 11th wedding anniversary. So you guys have a happy anniversary, 11 years. Here's to 11 more, then 11 more after that. If you're somebody who's asked me to go on your podcast, don't feel like I'm blowing you off. If you're a friend of the show, I will make every effort to go to your podcast. I don't judge going on people's podcasts based on their viewership. I don't do that. I do not do that. That's not how I operate. I go by people that I'm friends with. So people have said, well, I didn't think you would go on the show because I have a smaller podcast. I don't care. There are huge podcasts that I've told, hey, I got things I got to do because I don't really know them, but I'm flattered that they would want me on there to talk. But I do, and this isn't to sound, how do you say it, like arrogant or something. I get asked a lot. Susie Jago, thank you for that donation. I do get a lot of offers to do various things, and I don't have time for them. And Anthony, please tell them we were running ragged this past 2 weeks because of the, with the security business, and we go out of town for a weekend, and yeah, it was a mess when we came back.
Yeah, we take a little time off, and we're constantly playing catch up when we get back.
We were going to go to San Antonio tomorrow, and then it was going to rain, so
Yeah.
we were going to surprise Ken at the Paranormal conference and just go up on stage and start talking and just take the microphone away from those people that don't know what they're talking about. It's just about me.
Just crash it.
Just crash it. Just go up to each table, throw the book on there like Tombstone. Ken Gerhardt, huh? Heard of you? Aprons just don't go around here.
You don't belong around here, boy.
You don't belong around here. Just
You're in
start
the wrong neighborhood.
talking crap, like just being like whatever. No, I'm not going to do that. And then there was a collector's convention, and I thought, that's going to get me in trouble. I'm just going to go over there and spend money I don't have. So let's see. We got somebody who had messaged me and said they had a story. Where are you? Okay. She said, this is Autistic Bunny. All right, well, we'll call her. Let's see what happens. Let's cold call this person. Are you there?
Hi.
Hi. So, can I call you by your first name, or do you just want to go by Artistic Bunny?
Just you can call me Caitlin if you want. Sorry, I have the live stream on. My bad.
Okay. Yeah, just go ahead and mute that, and then we can talk. Okay, so
Yeah.
we can use your first name, right? So, Caitlin, I always ask people that. And a lot of people don't. They just don't want to be, and that's totally understandable. So, let me ask you a question, Caitlin. What is your story about? What does it pertain to?
Um. Well, I think I messaged you the story a while ago. It was about my brother, and it was about 20 years ago when he went to his friend's cottage, and it was about a apparition he saw. So
Okay. Well,
um. Mhm.
so let's hear it.
Um. Okay. So first things first. My family, we believe in the paranormal. Like I've always been told stories and everything. Specifically, my dad and my brother are ones that if they have something that happens to them, they do not like to talk about it. They freak out. Um, and my brother, this in this case, it took him 2 weeks to tell me this story. So, um, anyways, he must have been about 13. I must have been about 10 years old, and I live in Canada. So, and anyways, he went to his friend's cottage, and he was like really excited for like a month before. You know, how you get like annoying sibling that doesn't like stop talking and is like, "Oh, I'm gonna get away from you, haha! I'm gonna go to my friend's cottage, ha ha ha." He was like that, and so he was really excited. Well, when he finally went, he came back early. He was supposed to be there for a week. He came back about 2 or 3 days in, and he came back in the middle of the night, about 12 or 1 o'clock, and he was white as a sheet. And his best friend at the time, his parents drove him all the way from it was somewhere near Algonquin Park, all the way back to near Toronto in the middle of the night to take him back because he refused to stay where he was going at. So, um, and he wouldn't tell us at first. So eventually he told my dad, but again, it took him 2 weeks to tell me. So what had happened was he um he was playing Manhunt in the cottage area, and I think it's uh yeah, it's like it's in northern Ontario, so it was like the I'm not specific where it is. It was between like Barrie
You
and
don't have to tell
Algonquin
us the
Park.
location. Just
Yeah. No, 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 not like I don't know the specific
yeah. But you
location.
you
I just
don't
know
want to
it's in that
tell the
area.
location anyway, because people
Yeah.
will go there. So please don't
Yeah,
do
you're right.
that.
Yeah, you're
You have to
right.
be
Yeah.
kind of vague.
Yeah, so it was northern Ontario. And anyway, so he went up there and they were playing Manhunt, and if nobody knows what Manhunt is when one person it's kind of like hide and seek, but if somebody finds somebody, you can run away and re-hide. So it's not like, oh, I caught you or found you. They can run away and hide again. And anyway, so they were doing that, and he was hiding behind this tree, and it was the golden hour. And if anybody knows what the golden hour is, when the sun starts
Hmm.
going down, and you have those sort of rays going
Yeah,
into
I've heard of it.
yeah. So he's there. He's on the edge of this tree line on the one side of the cottage, and he says he sees something to the right of him, and he's thinking, oh, it's just the light. It's just the light. Something's very odd. And he said it got brighter, and so he kind of eventually looked to his right, and he saw this guy this guy with no legs. So it was a torso all the way up. It was this sort of see-through apparition, and he said it looked at him and it had no eyes. He said it had holes for eyes,
Mm.
and it had a safe, like a Grim Reaper, but
The scythe.
it wasn't. Yeah, but it wasn't a Grim Reaper. He said it would look like an ordinary man, like but in old clothing. And he said the thing looked at him, and he said the way he described it was it looked like through his soul, and he like it freaked him out, and so he just like he kind of stood up and stumbled back, ran off, started screaming, and like ran away. And his friends were like, what's going on, and he was really shaking. And so he told his friends went back, there was nothing there, obviously. And well, he was screaming so loudly that the neighbors came, and there's this really old couple that lived there for decades, and like they retired up north or whatever. And so when you hear a kid screaming, you come, right? So, oh, what's going on? And my brother was like, oh, there's like this old like farmer guy that was in the trees or whatever, was like floating. And they sort of like started to tell his friend's parents something, and they tried not to tell him because he was like 13 at the time, and he got really angry, and he's like, what is it? Like, don't lie to me, what is it? And he was like, um he started going towards them, and he's like, seriously, like, tell me what it is. And they said, well, there was a farmer and his family that burned alive in a farmhouse over 100 years ago in that area.
And so that he thinks that's what that was.
Yeah, and he doesn't know why it didn't have eyes. He doesn't, and he thinks the scythe was
Mhm.
like the harvester, right?
Yeah.
For the but that was my brother's story. And when he came home, he refused to tell the story. It scared him so much. And when you have a sibling or something, and you sort of have an event where you're like, they were scared, right? That was it.
Well,
That was
mine were
my brother.
sociopaths, so I couldn't tell. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
So, but I have other stories.
I got to tell you, that is the dumbest story I've ever heard of. I'm joking. Artistic. That was
Get
awesome.
off of the show. Hang up on
Get
it right
out
now.
of here. What's wrong with you? This farmer's trying to just be, demonic in peace and just
Farmer Dan out there doing
he's up
his
there
job.
floating around, and you're over here
Farmer
just
Dan.
telling his business.
How is he going to cut down the trees if he doesn't float?
I know.
I mean, he's got to do what he's got to do. All right, he's trying to do farm things. All right.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Right.
So my brother could have just been disturbing him. I don't know what it
Dude,
was.
you know what though? That would scare can you imagine if you were just driving down like maybe some of these back roads here in Texas, like Copeland, Rice's Crossing area, and one of these, deceased farmers just decides to float out, dude. I think I would just fall out of my my body.
Oh, I think I would die if he was holding a
I would
scythe.
just
I'm
be
like, oh,
dude, I'm done, dude.
it's the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
He's here for me.
That's why I always have one of y'all with me, so I could just be like, hey, take them.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we want you, Malachi. Oh, great.
Creepy
I'm the
farmer
popular
just-
one.
Yeah, there's more meat on your bones.
More meat on your
I
marrow
harvest you.
bones. You're just like, can we do rock, paper, scissors to see which one of us dies? That's scary though. And when you said that they had no legs, like just a floating torso, because I've gotten weird ones where they're like there's torsos or there's legs or we've heard arms. Oh god.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
floating
you said.
heads
I
in
think you
Asia.
told the story. of
Floating
the
heads, yeah.
Yeah.
He was
A
the brother
floating
from
head.
Walk Hard that got cut in half.
That's the worst case
Yeah.
of being cut in half I've ever
Oh,
seen.
God, that's-
I mean, we're not trying to make light of what happened to this guy, but I mean, it's
No.
he's out there floating around. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Just
Oh
thinking
no, and it was
about-
like 20 years ago. You'd probably. I don't know if you'd be able to talk to my brother about it now because I told him about the podcast and I was like, oh, like Josh might want to talk to you,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And he's like, like I have a story about my dad, and a Ouija board, and another story that I was present there. So I have like several stories.
Then we
but
need to
that's
get
a few of
together
mine.
and get those stories. I
Yeah.
imagine when you told your brother, "Hey, you need to talk to this guy," he's like, "Yeah, but I hate that guy. That guy
No,
just
he
can't
just
stand him. He's just so annoying."
no. You're really sweet. You're really
Oh,
funny.
you
You
talking
and
about me?
Nelly.
Oh no, her brother.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, not you, Mushu.
Mushi's like, "Well, everybody knows I hate you. That's common knowledge." Like I'd say that all the time behind your
That's
back.
all I
No,
said
you
at the
guys-
conference. I would never. Oh, don't listen to Wolf.
Never forget we were at the American Legion Hall about 10 years ago, and I confronted Tony, and Tony's like, "Yeah, I tell
Yeah,
people
that's
that all
me.
the time. I hate
Yeah.
you."
I don't even know how to like anyone.
Just like
I haven't
I
liked
thought
anyone
everybody
since I
knew
was
that.
born.
What's the big deal? You know, like
You like people? That's weird.
you know, I think what's really telling though is because he was, if the story is correct that he was burned, it would make sense that part of his body's probably gone. I mean, you know, and so
I
why
didn't
they
even
come
think
back?
about that.
Huh?
And
Do what?
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
well,
because
it's
half the
also it kind of explains the hollowed eyes, I think, too.
oh
Oh, you think his eyeballs melted, so that's why?
Well, I mean, it's a kind of a gruesome
that's
fact,
not
but
a
yeah, they
pleasant
do
Wow,
pop.
that is pretty horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, that's awful.
That is horrible, but yeah.
And we're not making
That
light of
actually
this, you know,
is.
because it's horrible.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
tell you one really quickly while you're on here, and that may add something to this. We have
Okay.
some friends that were firefighters, and one of my friends who worked in the Detroit Fire Department years ago, and they have this thing there that they've been doing for like 3 or 4 decades, man. It's called Devil's Night. And so
Oh.
what they do is the night before Halloween, these deviants in Detroit, they go and they light buildings on fire. Now, typically they use these abandoned buildings because part of Detroit looks like bombed out Baghdad, and it's sad to see American City just decaying and crumbling like that. It was once an industrial, what do you call stronghold? Now it's just whatever. And so I have gotten some creepy stories out of Detroit. There's people who told me some really creepy stories. But this guy was a firefighter, and he was actually a friend of mine was an EMT, used to work with him. And so he told me, I said, my friend Kent has a story. And so I talked to this guy, and he was a firefighter, and he told me that one time when they were putting out a blaze, and it wasn't like just like a 4-alarm or whatever, it was minor, that it just started. And he said, dude, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, I don't think that a human being started this fire. And I asked him why he thought that. And he says, very simple. When we were putting out the flame, we saw what we thought was a person on fire, and that they were moving around in the flames, and their water was squelching the fire around it. But the humanoid figure that was in the fire was not being affected by the water.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, and when he told me, it was me and my brother, I believe. Where is he anyway? Ask him to moderate.
Oh, he's in here.
Okay, but me and my brother were told that story a lot because me and my brother, I'm going to get him on the show eventually and get him to where he can talk. My brother has had his throat cut. I don't know, and that's nobody's business, but I'm telling you, that's why his throat is messed up. It's scratched his vocal cords. He was actually doing something good, trying to stop some people from killing a homeless man. That's nobody's business, but I'm not saying like, oh, my brother's a big hero. I'm telling you, he jumped out of our vehicle and tried to help some guy that was being beaten to death, and he got stabbed in his throat. And so his voice is scratched permanently now, and it's sad because he used to be a vocalist in a band. Now, I hate to put my brother's business out there, brother, forgive me, and so me and my brother started all this together. Like we started this map. I know, Anthony, you've seen it. We did that map for the Devil's Backbone.
Yeah.
And we did he was all into the reptilian agenda and whatever, but he can't talk like me because of what has happened to him. And so, hey, B Moss. And so, we were told this story by somebody that was a friend of a friend. A friend of ours had a record label years ago. My brother used to go and record riffs for him. And the guy's name was Scott, but he had this guy that he introduced us to. And this guy told us a story, but then he says, hey, man, my friend was a firefighter. You should check this story out. And when we talked to this guy, it blew our minds. Like, this thing was some sort of demon, because when he tried to spray it with water, it wasn't going out, and it wasn't a person. And then it just kind of like went through the wall, and it went through a brick wall and came out on the other side, and then was like just ash. And so
Oh,
everybody was like, there was a person in there. There was a person in there. They were like, no, there wasn't. That was something else. I don't know what that was. But it was moving around, like walking slowly back and forth, and it was lighting everything on fire.
like it was pacing around, touching
Yeah.
everything.
And everything
Oh,
it touched was burning, and it was weird. Now, when he told us that story, I thought there's got to be, because I've heard other stories like that. And then so my brother actually fielded some of these reports back in the day too, along with our old co-host, along with Scorpion, and along with these
mm-hmm.
guys and all the people that work with us. There's about 8 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? There's 8 of us?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember. I know there's 8 of us, and then there's a few people that help out with the show here and there too. But we get stories from all over. And one of them, I don't even remember the origin of it, but I looked it up, and it was in the archive on my computer, on one of my computers, and I saw Fire Devil. I just saw Fire Devil on there, and so I looked into it. And I'll
Mm.
be damned, it was crazy, dude. It was a story of of a woman here in Austin who owned a bar. Back in the 70s, she claimed that she had a biker bar on the edge of town, and I'm not going to say her name because I don't have permission to. But
Mm-hmm.
the place isn't there anymore. It's something else. But she had 2 fires that were started, and people witnessed this. Like 3 or 4 people at one time witnessed it. This story was given to us. There was some sort of like humanoid figure that was walking through the bar, and it lit the curtains on fire.
Oh,
And another time, it was like a flame that jumped out of a candle. So they banned all candles, any kind of fire. And this thing, it wasn't like coming out of nowhere. It was coming out of flames that they had. And so I just
wow.
read that like I think Monday. I think I was talking about it Monday with my brother. But it was crazy. And then you get on here and talk about that, because I was actually going to throw those out there on Sunday, but I got a full plate to talk about on Sunday already. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, we're waiting for those of you who don't know what's going on. We're waiting for Paul Wallace to get up and get his coffee and get going. He's from England, and he's going to talk about his Wolflands documentary and talk about werewolf dogman sightings in England.
You mean Paul Wallace or Paul Sinclair?
Paul Sinclair.
Paul
I'm sorry.
Sinclair, yeah.
Paul Wallace is from Australia. Somebody just said or is that Amanda? She says almost 500 watching and only 100 likes. Please show some support, people. Thank you. Yeah, Paul Wallace will be. I'm supposed to be recording with him again soon, because he had just finished his last book that completed his trilogy, and he actually reached out about doing a show with him for sure. I love talking to Paul Wallace and Paul Sinclair. But thank you for coming on the show. Look, get with me, Caitlin, and we can go over your stories. And if you want to come back, and you spoke very well. Like, a lot of people get nervous and stuff, and you might have been nervous, but I couldn't tell. So
Yeah, I was a little nervous. Yeah, and I have several stories, and yeah, I have there's a creature that my grandfather was born in India, and he's talks about this creature that's in India that you might want to hear about. I did mention it to you before, but again, you have so many things that are told to you. So
what province of
um,
India was he born in?
I'm not sure, but he said he was near Nagpur.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
So I bet you I could figure out which creature that is. The region where your dad is from, that's your dad is Indian?
no, my grandfather, and he's Anglo, so he was British. He
Oh, he
was
was British.
yeah,
Okay.
British Indian. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So but he would know, like, he would probably know, um he knows the history and the culture and all that. He would know.
He was he was born in 1939. He was there when Gandhi was assassinated.
Wow.
And he said he saw things. He saw a man, he was on a train, and he saw it was a train guy, and it jumped off. The guy jumped off. It was him or my great grandfather. Anyway, some Bengal tiger grabbed the guy and dragged the guy up the into the jungle, and all they saw was the lantern going up the hill. All kinds of stories like that. Ever
Yeah.
since, he's told me ever since I was little. But he used to tell me about this. It's a creature with its feet backwards,
Backwards. Yeah. We
and
were
I
just
forgot what
talking
it's
about
called.
that the other day, Anthony. Who was
Yeah.
telling us that?
Yeah, who was it? I don't remember.
Somebody was telling us about a creature that with back. Who? Where were they
Oh,
from?
you know what? It was at the outlet mall, wasn't it? Whenever we were at
Oh,
those dudes'
he's from
kiosks.
Bangladesh.
Yeah.
No, not
No, he was
Bangladesh.
from
Yeah.
Nepal.
Nepal.
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's from that same area, and I think I have the name here. It's what is it?
Yeah.
What is it? It's a churl or a
Mm,
trail.
okay.
It's got it churl or trail, and my my great grandparents would tell the kids and Tim, like, don't go into the trees because the trail or the churl will be sitting in the tree waiting. And it's usually the story of like this pregnant lady that died, and so her feet are backwards and her head's backwards, and she has red eyes and really long nails, and they sit in trees and call children. But I was also told another story from somebody that was from the Middle East. But
But before
anyways,
before before you go any further,
yeah,
that story, where that originates from, that story, it's very common in central India,
yeah,
where you're talking about. People believe that, and it's very akin to Lilith,
hmm
what you're talking about, and it's typically a female spirit, and she's able to turn her feet around backwards so that people can't track her. And there is a way to kill it. I believe that the legend or the story is that you have to shoot it in the eye or between the eyes, and that's the only way to kill it. You can't kill it any other way. It
hmm
has to pierce the eye. And I
hmm
believe it's like a particular eye. Now the Indians, they believe there's a whole culture there of the evil eye.
well,
The
the third
right
eye
eye
as well.
is the evil eye. Yeah. Well, the third eye is different. What I'm talking about is the evil eye. The evil eye is
Oh,
your
the
right
evil
eye.
eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason that cult believes that the right eye is evil, they will actually cover that eye, because and they don't realize that we know through science, but that's been something that they've done for 1,000 years, is that they believe transcendence comes by covering the right eye. The right eye absorbs things and goes to the left side of the brain. So
hmm
you absorb things, the negative things come in through the right eye. A person who loses their left eye could become very cynical. And I'm telling you, this is actual science. You can look this up, folks. I never blow smoke, and I never tell you,
No,
you know.
no, it makes sense because the left part of the brain, the left side of the brain is the more logical, like kind of calculating side of the side.
Mm-hmm.
The right
Yeah.
side is the creative
Creative.
side, you know.
Yes, I went to art school, and we were told that very very early on that
Look through your left eye.
um, creative people creative people are more right brained,
Mm-hmm.
and more people like that, the sort of the left and the right brain. I've heard that. So that the eye thing, that actually sounds very um, very logical. Funny enough, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Logical side.
But you know that region and that's central India, Nagpur, where he was at. Um, when you start to look, like if you look at the map of India, if you go there and you look at the different provinces, they all have a different dialect. They all have a different like. Uh, it's so vast, so big, and you have so
hmm
many different cultures that are there. And one of the oldest, well, the oldest culture on earth that we know that still exists. Like everybody always throws out Sanskrit, cuneiform, Sumerian, but those cultures are gone. They're long gone. But the Tamil is the longest running, still going, still longest, and it's not a dead language.
Yeah.
hmm
And so the Tamil culture which would have been south of where your dad was from, or grandfather.
hmm
And the cult, there's a name for it too. I can't remember what it is. And some of them will even go so far as to like close up their right arm and not use it, because they believe that they call upon Krishna, and then they renounce their left. I mean their. What are you doing? Walking in like a ghoul over here. But there's like they covered the right eye because it corresponds to the left side of the brain. And I was actually having a conversation with an optometrist, and she was Korean, wasn't she? The lady I was talking to about that.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, she was Korean, and she's like, "Oh, you know about that?" So we started talking, and it only makes sense. My wife was getting an eye exam a couple years ago, and we were talking about that. When something happens to the right, your left eye, and you use your right eye, there literally people become more cynical. They can become angry, depressed, because they start to they're taking in everything from the world through that eye, which is the evil eye. Yeah. Somebody says here, I lost my left eyesight at 15. Honestly, I'm a better person than I've ever been. Well, that's good. That's good for you. I'm glad that you were able, but like I said, the left eye corresponds to the right side of the brain and vice versa.
That's
I mean,
that's
of
really
course,
funny that you said that as well, because I have a lazy left eye and I've had it since I can remember. And uh yeah, I'm depressed. So that's funny that you said that.
You feel like you're depressed?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, there's
But
things you can do, like you can poke both of your eyes out and be blind and at peace.
well,
Don't
actually,
do that. Please don't do that.
no, actually, you know how they say never keep your hair in your face, like to girls or people or men with really long hair, don't keep your hair in your face, is because you can develop a lazy eye. And I did that, and my
I didn't
right
know
eye
that.
is slightly
neat.
lazy.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
Is that
wow, that's
the real
great.
thing? I got to look that in.
I had
look
long
into
hair
that.
when
Yeah,
I was young too, so no one ever told me that.
when
Well,
you
yeah,
were
so
young,
that's what they said,
Yeah,
don't keep your hair in your
it's just
face
kind of
because
weird.
oh,
it
my
will
bad,
cover
old
your
man.
eyes. And I never believed it until one day my right eye actually, when I put something in front of it, it can go lazy. It can go off to the side. So, yeah,
Yeah, that would make sense.
don't don't leave stuff in your face like your hair or something, right?
Yeah, I didn't. Guess I learned something new today. If that's correct, I got somebody says Forrest Whitaker. I know Forrest Whitaker. Actually, he used to hang out at our club when he was filming, and we kind of became friends. But to me, if you look at like these cults, that they develop. I want to say cult. I want to say like religion or whatever they develop over from thousands of years ago. Okay, and they had no way to know scientifically but they figured it out. And you always
Yeah,
kind of wonder, like, how did they figure it out? Like, how did somebody go, you know what? If I just keep my right eye closed, like, who figured that out? Like, was that like, did they meditate on that? The yogis tell them, or
I'm pretty sure it was some dude who got hit in the eye and only had one eye.
and then he became a happy-go-lucky person because
And
he was
then
looking through his
then
left
another
eye.
dude got hit in the other eye, and he was just a real
He was just
crappy
a real,
person.
he was a butthole.
And they were like, I wonder
This
what the
guy
correlation
sucks
is.
over here. Let's just do this, cover this eye, and then we're all. I mean, seriously though, who comes up with that? I mean, but it works. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
well,
what
they do say when you lose a sense, your other
The others
senses are
become,
enhanced.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, like if you lose the one sense in your left eye, you see, as you said, things less
I lost
cynical.
one of my shoes
Right?
one time, and I walked all the way down Diva Street in the summer.
Was it your left one?
It
'Cause
was
that would have been a
actually, and all I
problem.
did was give blisters on that foot.
Gave me a hop step. I mean, I walk with like a limp.
I wonder though, because here's when I first read about that, and I think I read it in Fate magazine. Honestly, I think that's where I read it. So if you guys want to go look that up, go look it up. There's an article. I think it's in Fate magazine. Phyllis Galdi. I remember reading something too about that, kind of confirming it. It was either in Scientific American or Discover or Mental Floss. I'm big on those science rags. I read them all the time. Now I just get them on my phone. It's like I just sit there reading them all the time, and then you're like, oh wait, I've been sitting in the bathroom for 2 hours. Maybe I should go find my wife. I don't know what she's probably worried about me. I'm kidding, folks. But no, I'll sit there and I'll read these articles and things. And so I actually did this. And Anthony, I don't remember this. Remember, you were probably like 18, 19. I kept my eye covered for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept my right eye covered just to see. And I did actually notice a difference. But you got to take into account, too, though, I was expecting something to change.
Yeah, so your mind said,
And I was like, oh, look, everything's more positive. I don't want to kill my brother and Scorpion now. You know?
wow, you're slightly less ugly
Well,
today.
And we should probably clarify that, like, we're not saying that it's like a surefire, unavoidable thing that if you lose sight in your left eye and you can only see through your right eye, that you're gonna be. It's like
Yeah.
that it's unavoidable that you're gonna become a different, like, more cynical, calculating person.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of be headed that way already.
Yeah.
Anything
Plus-
to do with eyes, please check with a doctor first.
Yeah.
People.
Well, plus, I mean, like, anything can be overcome with the spirit. You don't have to be beholden to your body's physiological or genetic proclivities, let's call them.
We're here to overcome it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we're supposed to. Like, we're supposed to overcome the negative things that are part of us physically, that over which we have no control. Like, we can't control that they're there, but we can control how we handle them.
Mhm.
And that's where the power of the spirit comes in.
I think I actually do know where that study came from, where people figured out the differences in the brain. It was because I don't know if it was one of the world wars or if it was just like.
I'm talking about how the people from India did.
Oh, okay,
Because they've been doing that for years.
Yeah, because I remember
I think it was a Bengali practice.
reading a story where someone got like a railroad spike.
Oh yeah, that was
In the
not World
head.
War. That was some people. That was a guy I think he was in the 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, and he had like a railroad spike that went through his head. Well, we got to get our guest on. Thank you for
Thank you
being
so much,
a
Artistic.
stand-in guest. And did you just call her autistic?
No, I said artistic.
Artistic. Artistic.
Thank you,
'cause-
Autistic
'cause
Bunny.
I
I
like
like-
art. I like art and I like bunnies. So there you go.
Yeah. Now we introduce Ephraim the retarded rabbit. Okay, so anyways, all right, folks. So thank you for that donation, Mitchell Best. What does he say? Is there
a good cryptid encyclopedia with sketches and maps and history of each one, including ghosts, would be good. Would you write one after you're done writing?
I think that you need to go, and I did the forward for this, International Cryptids with Kenny Irish, and then go to Ryan Edwards' book about cryptozoology.
And,
Those two are pretty, they're pretty good.
And David Weatherly is writing a books about all the 50 states.
Every 50 state, every state. He's
Yeah,
on
so
he's
those
done
are-
like 18 of them.
Yeah, those are pretty good too.
But okay, folks, thank you, artistic bunny. Now it's
Or Caitlin. Yeah.
yeah. So get in touch with me, and we'll go over your stories, and you can come back on, and we'll do a show.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Josh.
All right. I'll see you. So that was a listener who had some. She stood in while we were waiting for Paul because I had. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Let's call Paul back. Right, he called.
Hello.
Paul.
How are you doing, Josh? You all right?
I'm all right.
I've got an echo here. Let me just click your show off, or at least mute it. One sec, my friend.
All right, you do that, my friend.
Yeah, we're good. We're good to go.
Let me see if I can do
How are you?
if I can do a Paul Sinclair. All right, Josh, how you doing? I did the Wolflands documentary.
I think
Paul,
you're
you
doing
got-
a Welshman.
Well, Welsh.
You have to do your best to do an American accent now.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm going to leave it to you guys. Josh is the comedian. Well, it's good to be here.
Well, one thing people don't realize about you, though, Paul, is you are a strong guy. We saw a video of you.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about it.
You don't talk much about it, but you are a strong dude, man.
Yeah, where do you know? All years I've been researching, I kind of keep that. I have kept it to myself. I showed it you, Josh, and I think you know why, because I know that you've in the past you've worked out a lot. You probably still do, and you know I just don't. I doubt if anybody knows who's involved with the research as such. But yeah, first ever British Arm Wrestling Championships, did very well in that. I think the winner went to Over the Top, and I narrowly missed out on that. You know, the film Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
And it weren't fictional. They just wanted characters who were involved in that. Used to train with British powerlifting champion. Entered quite a few bodybuilding competitions as a younger man. And at 60 now, I don't mean it's behind me, Josh, but the days of shifting lots of weight are kind of over. But yeah, I wanted to show you because anybody can kind of talk the talk, and you know what's coming. Not many will walk the walk. And at 54-year-old, I think there were 90-pound dumbbells, and I did, I don't know what 36, 37 reps.
I saw you. I was
press.
very impressed. I was like, wow. But I think weightlifting is the fountain of youth.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It does help. I mean, as I say, I still come in this gym, which I'm sat in now. I've got a little office outside of it, and if you can call it that, it's a little box. And, I still train. I don't want to switch off. I don't want to just sit on some couch watching daytime TV. I'm active all the time. As I think everybody knows, that's my game, if that's the right word to use. I mean, last night I found the lane where I was going to do some research were closed off. They were doing some repairs on it. So I had to walk a mile up this lane to get to the cliff tops. And me and my little dog, we were on there, complete darkness, nobody about. And that's where we spent quite a few hours. I weren't as long as what I would normally be, Josh, because I was mindful that I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to sit and talk with you guys. And But that's what it's about. If you're going to see things of an unexplained nature, you've got to put yourself in these locations, and that doesn't mean that you're going to have any success. You can spend months and months and get absolutely nowhere with the pursuit of looking for it. But since 27th of last month, anglers, fishermen, people walking these cliff tops and have been seeing things have been seen, mostly unexplained lights, but it had gone dead, this area, Josh, for probably, I don't know, 12, 18 months. There'd not been a lot reported, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, some things just sparked and it's up and running again, and there's things to be seen, and I'm getting lots of reports, so I thought I'd get myself up there, see if I could film it. We managed to get a bit of light form phenomena on film Wednesday night, and nothing last night. But as usual, Josh, you just hit me with whatever you like. Well, except your fist. And
well, it's kind of hard to do across the pond, and you're a nice guy, so I wouldn't do that anyway.
But yeah, and as you know, I prefer to be sort of labelled as a multi-phenomena researcher rather than a researcher of cryptids, because it's a subject, Josh, that I never thought I'd get into. It wasn't on my radar when I started looking into UFOs and everything else. I mean, that's something that stems from my childhood through to present day. But writing the first book, reports of an upright bipedal fur-covered creature came to me. I put a few newspapers put a few articles in for me, kindly saying, author wants reports of the strange and unusual. And I started getting reports from a little place called Flixton in North Yorkshire, which is not far from where I live. 10 miles, 11 miles from where I live. Never heard of it before. And so I didn't set off as a cryptid researcher or someone interested in the subject. And I just got hooked onto it, the Flixton werewolf, and went to the village, tiny village, and spoke to a few locals, elderly people some of them who carried these stories and had carried them for many years. In one instance, an old guy had carried them since 1940s, where he claimed he'd seen this thing. But interestingly, around a burial mound, because that became a lot of things in the research, and you've done tons of research, Josh, and the people that surround you have. There's patterns that kind of show up, and I suppose it's same all over the world. And your Indian burial mounds, you get talk of skinwalkers and things, and I don't know whether we're not dealing with something similar. So we've got earthworks and burial mounds, not every time, but more than usual, where these things are showing up. So we've got the Flixton werewolf. Started looking into that, and as you just spread that net wider, at the back of Flixton, there's a river called the River Derwent. You just open that net up, and you start going into the forests of North Yorkshire, which the River Derwent runs through, and you've got more reports of these strange bipedal creatures. But they don't just come because Paul Sinclair's researching them. I'm only walking in the footsteps of other people here, Josh. If you go back in time, go back through folklore, you find that these things are written about, and maybe not in the same terminology, obviously, that we're speaking about them today, but they're written about in ancient times. Huge fur-covered beasts with glowing eyes that people encountered hundreds of years ago. Through the annals of folklore, on the cliff tops of East and North Yorkshire and further up the country, in the forests in Scotland, all of these things, all the ingredients for if we want to call it the werewolf, I mean, I know people want to call these things dogmen. I think we're only just playing with words here. Primarily, we call it the werewolf in UK. And I think we've also got the Bigfoot phenomena, the sightings of that, because one of them in Wolflands, one of the accounts, it's described more as a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch than what it would be a dogman. But yeah, it's all there, Josh. I'll just grab a drink. Okay. Are you still there, Josh?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh, okay, my friend.
So let me ask you a question, Paul. You and I have corresponded a lot over the last couple of years, I think, and you were on our show. I think we did the podcast, and then you have written what, 5 books? How many books do you have?
There's 5 books, Josh.
5.
I've put the brakes on them for now because I'll not cut across your question, but just briefly, why? 60 years old, I still find myself in all these forests and all over the country. I'll just follow the research. Not always going to be able to do that. Plenty of time for me to sit down and write a book. Sorry, Josh, I interrupted.
No. You're the guest. So let me ask you a question about this. And so, folks, anybody, when we do the giveaways, if you're in the UK and you win, what we do, I have a deal with Paul Sinclair. Paul sends you a book for me. So that's a deal I have with Paul, and then I square up with him. So you guys, at least you'll get something from us, because shipping to the UK is ridiculous. I mean, they have made it absolutely ridiculous. Even shipping to Canada. I mean, it shouldn't be as much as it is. It's just ridiculous.
It's a racket.
It is. And so if you win on a giveaway, which we're going to do one tonight, and if you're from the UK and you get picked, well, you know what? Paul will send you a book, and I'll take care of it. Right, Paul? We do that. And
we do that, and it's a method that works, Josh, and I get them in the post, well, literally next day, so it's all good.
Yeah, and you have a show called Truth Proof, right?
That's correct. Yeah, every Thursday we run a live stream and 7 p.m. UK time.
Yeah, I show up every once in a while.
Yeah, you do, and it's great when you do because it saves me talking.
I mean, it's been one of those things where you and your research, I think you were one of the first people, and I first heard you on that other show we both were on, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And
I know exactly what you're talking about. That one that I were on that I don't go on no more.
Yeah, me neither. No, a lot of people don't, but yeah, and you're one of me, and you were kind of in that same brotherhood of people who don't go there anymore, but. Yeah, we are, and that's how we met. But I heard your work, and I heard you talking about these stories, and I think that most people in the States, they don't realize how much of this is there in Britain and in England and Wales, Scotland, Ireland. There's a bunch of it in those British Isles, and you don't really know until you talk to people from there, and then they'll tell you. Like, I know a few British people here that I'm friends with, and they're like, "Oh man, yeah, people see these werewolves like all the time. Like, it's very, very common." And I have a friend who's British. Recently, a friend of mine's ex-girlfriend had reached out to me, and she wanted me to ask you a question. Her name is Chelsea.
Okay.
So if you're listening, Chelsea, I'm asking the question now. What have you gotten on the bear man? Because she lives up in the hill country and was very intrigued by that. And she hasn't seen it or anything like that, but she was very intrigued because she lives in this area where we're getting stories. And I'm going to have a guy that I'm going to record with on Thursday, Eric Palacios, who's done the Bigfoot, it's the Beast of Brushy Creek documentary on Amazon. And he's into this bear man phenomena. And I was wondering if you got stories over in England you know, the Flixton and all that other stuff. Do you get reports that where they look that way?
That's interesting what you say, the bear man, and I've never written about the name you've just said, the bear man. And we know we're not talking about somebody naked here. We're talking about something fur covered. You're a comedian, Josh, not me, but the bear man.
Well, that was a pretty good zinger there.
Yeah. Right. Whilst making Wolflands, we did a lot of research into an area called Langdale End. It's in the North Yorkshire Forest. It's what's called in the Forge Valley. There's a lot of Norse influence there as well. You know, there's a lot of Norse connotations in the place names and everything. So when I got talking to, again, some of the locals, they believe, or they say, that there's a bear in Langdale End in the valley. They believe that people have been seeing a bear. Now, we're in the UK. We're not far from civilization. Wherever you go, we can't sort of wander for days and weeks in remote forests where these things could possibly evade detection. So I'm not sure that they're seeing a bear, but it's interesting that you say that, because apparently people walking through this valley where the same river, the River Derwent, runs through, have ran to farmers in fields, should we say. That's one of the accounts I got, to stop somebody in a tractor and say, we've just seen a huge animal, we think we've seen a bear. And other people have come with that story. One of the main witnesses in Wolflands, the gamekeeper, we never get to grips with what it was that he saw. And I've done this one before, Josh, but I think it's probably, in view of what you're talking about, it's worth telling that this gamekeeper, 2002, worked in a forest very close, 7 miles away from the Derwent, but all these forests they've all got different names, but they're only separated by names. So the Derwent ran through Broxer and that particular area, Broxer Forest, which incidentally, the Broxer in some cultures is a shape-shifting demon. So we've got a forest that's called Broxer. So, but he's in Stape. This guy's in 2002. Working there, young gamekeeper, former Marine. So he's kind of, you know, he's a good outdoorsman and used to being out in the wilds. The first thing that happens whilst he's doing his job, he's with his cousin who's come to see him for a few days, is that they're walking back to this abandoned farmhouse which he's found and is using as his base, and a sphere of light just bursts from the side of him, from his right hand side, up from the ground. They look at this going up into the air. He thinks that there's squaddies, you know, troops out in forest, and he drops his cousin to the ground, and they wait for troops to come out of the undergrowth, out of the bracken. Nobody comes. We're very close as well to RAF Fylingdales, one of the first defence areas. It's a radar station up in North Yorkshire, so that's why he thought the troops might be around, because there's often exercises a few miles further up. So nothing happens. Over the period of a few days, his cousin goes home. He hears voices very close to him, almost on his shoulder is how he describes it. Yeah, he keeps turning around, kind of startled. There's nothing there. Him and another gamekeeper hear a baby crying in the forest. It sounds like a human infant. I mean, and we hear that story with the Bigfoot, with the Sasquatch phenomena. I'm not talking bear man, and this is the build up to it. And as they venture into the forest to where this sound's coming from, it stops. It starts up further, deeper in. His words were, it's almost luring us in. And then I don't know what period of time passes, but it's all pretty tight. We're only talking within days to a week when all of this sort of culminates from the sphere of light. He's made a fire, settled down in this farmhouse in his sleeping bag, feet to the fire, wakes up in the early hours of the morning. Looking at the window, which is no curtains, this place had been abandoned since 1956. It was called Brownhead Farm. I mean, all of these things, all these locations, Josh, can be Googled. You find these places. And he said this huge shape came up to the window. upright, bipedal. And he said it was so tall, it was stooping to look down, so he couldn't see ears, but he could see this monstrous head, huge shoulders. He said, and I just laid there in the darkness. He said he knew where the shadow fell, that he thought it might not be able to see him. But I've often wondered what that was, Josh. And although we've never suggested that it could have been anything that people are calling a bear man, it kind of makes you wonder. This thing stood there. I said to him, because he said the back door he barricaded up and he bolted the front door. I said, what do you think it could have done if it had wanted to? He said, well, that big, it could have come through the wall, in his opinion. And when we made Wolflands, this guy was between 21 and 22 stone, a huge, imposing guy. He said it would have made him look like a little boy. Whatever it was that big. The next night, or over the period of a few days, he was so rattled by and unnerved by what he'd seen. He said, I got in front of the farmhouse, there was about 30 to 40 feet of clear ground. There was pines right up to the side of the farmhouse and at the back. He'd worked there a few years and never found this property. It were only when they went in for some reason off the forest path that he came across it and decided to use it as his home base, because he was living in a caravan as part of the job prior to that. So, but getting back to the story, he decided that he was, his words again, I'm going to get the drop on it. He said, and I went to the edge of the pines, which were 30 to 40 feet away from the farmhouse, put a tarp down and settled in for the night to watch. He only wanted to watch. He didn't take a gun with him or anything. He was unnerved. He felt like he was being watched all the time. And sure enough, he said, in the early hours of the morning, this thing came out of the forest. So you've got the main farmhouse with over the ground floor and the first floor, and then you'd got some buildings that offshot to it that sort of went along to the left, just lower down, low buildings, low barns. He said its head was higher than the fascia board of the barns, and he couldn't see a muzzle or ears. He could see a huge head and shoulders, saw no leg movement. He said it arrived. So that's another aspect to this. We'll call it a phenomena, because there's so many things that take it away from your normal flesh and blood creature. It's another aspect that fascinates me, especially when you look at the hunters in America, and we could get to that in a moment, that still believe that this is a normal bipedal flesh and blood creature, and then they turn around and say they've shot it and nothing happens. He said it just arrived. He said almost like taking a torch beam down the side of the building. There's no movement. It just arrived, stood at the window looking in like it did a few nights before when he observed it whilst he was laid in the farmhouse. He said, but it was so big, he couldn't actually, excuse me, he couldn't actually see the ears or anything because they were obscured. He'd got this outline of it going down the buildings and these huge shoulders as it stood at the window with a bit of backlight for the fire. And did he see, was this what some people call the bear man? Was it Sasquatch? Or was it what other people would call the werewolf, the Dogman? We will never know, I suppose. But that's as close as I can get to that analogy of the bear man, Josh.
I wanted to say something about that. The Norman invasion of England, which took place, William the Conqueror, I mean, it took place in the 11th century. And prior to that, it was Saxon. There was a Saxon invasion, and there was Anglo, and it was Anglo, and then it was Saxon, and it became Anglo-Saxon. Well, when the Normans invaded, I think that they brought a lot of their culture with them, and I think it was a Viking culture. Now, of course, it was Normandy, and it was part of France, but that area of France was carved out, which became Normandy, which was the Normans. It was carved out by Vikings, and it was the Viking invasions. And of course, if anybody's ever seen the show Vikings, you guys have seen it, right, Tony Anthony?
Yeah.
And so those cultures were a clash of cultures. Now, one of the main properties, or I don't know, how would you say it, like of the soldiery of the Vikings? They weren't like organized soldiers, but they were called berserkers, and they wore and there were distinctly two different kinds. There were wolf, smaller, thinner shock troops that they used, as guerrilla fighters, and then there were these bigger, larger Viking soldiers that they used as like the vanguard. They were the fist, and they wore bearskins. And I do believe that there was so much fear that was generated by these people that I think it was something that stuck with not only the French when they were attacked, and were forced to defend against these berserkers, these marauders that came from the north. They were just like, they would come at night and they would burn people's cities and they would pillage and rape and did all kinds of horrible things. And then eventually they settled in that region of France. And then eventually they decided, we want to go to England. And it was one of the few times where England was actually conquered. I believe it was actually the last time that England was actually taken, because the English Channel has protected them from, World War II, obviously World War I, World War II. Britain was kind of saved by being an island people, kind of like Japan. It's never really been invaded and conquered. The Mongols and the Chinese and the Koreans tried, and they couldn't really because of the water. It's a very similar situation with Britain. Britain has a lot of parallels with Japan.
Yeah.
But it did happen at one time where when the Normans crossed, and I believe that they brought a lot of that tradition with them because the Normans really were the descendants of Vikings. And I think that a lot of cross-breeding between the Norman people and the Anglo-Saxon people, and I think that that's where it came from. And I think some of these, we would call them in the Appalachians, like granny witches, some of these medicine women and men, they would use those skins, those stories come from the Normans, where they would use the skin of the animal. Like if they would bring over like a bear skin and they would transform. Now, whether or not that really happened is up for speculation because some people believe that people can shapeshift, some people don't. But I believe that there's something like preternatural fear that we have of these furry giant creatures, and the Vikings played upon that big time. But if you look at reports, they go back, to those to that particular era. The Vikings were full-on believers in shapeshifting. They really believed that they could do it. They believed that it was a spiritual thing, and that they could harness the ability of the bear spirit. And they would even say a prayer and drink like this hallucinogen, and they would be like, bear spirit, guide me. And then they would go and go crazy, and they would kill. But what people see and have seen for a long, long time, is and also in Brittany, which is now part of France too, those regions, there are people who claim that they still to this day see what look like Viking warriors in like a spirit form, and they turn into like a wolf or a bear, not a bear wolf-like creature, but like they will see something that looks like a ghost that's transforming into an animal. And I believe that it goes back to that invasion, I think, because it was really not just the Normans either. They had allies, the Flemish, which are Dutch descended people, but they were Belgian, that part of that of Belgium where they had been conquered 2 centuries prior by another invasion of the Danish and the Finnish, which had like and which is pretty much still Viking people. And I think a lot of it goes back to them. And I believe that their views, the Vikings, very much match up, very similar to the Native Americans when it comes to their belief system. It's really weird when you read about the Vikings and what they believe, then you read the Native Americans, in particular like the Algonquins and some of the what are they called, the Huron people and the Iroquois, the ones to the northeast. I believe that they interacted with the Vikings, and I believe there was trading that was done, and I believe there was some cross-culture interaction, and I believe it happened anywhere between the 900s to the 1200s, far superseding the colonies and the Spaniards or the English showing up there. I think the Vikings were there, and I think that they had very similar views because there's an Algonquin legend of a tree and a wolf. It's the same thing with the Norwegians. They have the same view. And so there has to be some sort of connection there. There was some sort of cross culture. And I believe that that's why we got skinwalkers over here and then they got the berserkers over there. I just think that that played a big role in the psyche of the English people whenever they were basically taken over and conquered by the Normans. They adopted a lot of their legends and a lot of their history. And I think that when you went further north, the Romans fully believed that the Scottish people were wild men, that they were crazy, that they were shapeshifters. The Romans were like, Hadrian's Wall. I mean, there's a reason why they built that. They believed that werewolves lived. There was even a Roman general who claimed that, in his own words, and I think it was Pliny, it was either Pliny the Elder or Pliny the Younger who actually talked about this particular Roman general saying that there's nothing but werewolves in those woods, going beyond the English border. Because, and maybe it was something they thought up in their own minds, but we talked about it at the conference. One of the speakers was talking about it. Can't remember who was off the top of my head, but they were talking about the Roman influence on our history. And of course, Romulus and Remus, they were supposedly suckled by she-wolves. And I think that the Roman culture kind of set the tone for the rest of Europe. When you look at Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, and France being Gaul, it was conquered by the Romans. And then, of course, eventually you had the Viking infusion, and then, of course, it ended up in England. And I think that you just trace the history of these creatures, these beings, or whatever they are. I really think that you go back in time, you can find like these weird connections that why they believe the way they do. The Romans borrowed very heavily from the Greeks, and the early English borrowed very heavily from the Romans, and then later the Normans, and it just went on and on. If that makes any sense. Does that make any sense? Am I making sense?
It makes loads of sense,
it
Josh,
does.
and it's just fascinating because you touched on the berserkers, and I'd looked at that myself, and the reason they were called the berserkers, it's in the word, it's in the name, the berserkers, and which is fascinating. And I looked at it years ago, and so I may have got this wrong, people, and there'll be people within your chat that'll correct me, but I think they call it's ham and hammer, and that's the flux of change and the transformation. And the Norse influence is everywhere around this location, or these locations. It's in the place names, the connotations to the wolf. It's all there. And just to stay with the berserkers for a moment, they used to the hallucinogenic that they consumed were the flygaric. The red spotted mushroom that you'll see in fairy tales. And what I think what historians and what researchers believe they did was, because it's toxic, it's highly toxic for us as humans. So we're not saying it to anybody, try this.
Don't go hunting.
We're not suggesting this, and you've not got a herd of reindeers to do what I'm going to suggest next, or what they used to do. But they would feed the flygarics to the reindeer. And then they would drink the urine of the reindeer, and all the toxins had been filtered out. And that is what they've come up with how the berserkers could get away with what they were doing. And we've also, in these forests, we've also got legends and stories, not just in the forests, along the coastline and throughout the UK really, but primarily along the coastline of North Yorkshire, which is close to where I live. We've got the Bar Guest, and once again it's the Bar Guest, the Bear Guest. And this is what are we looking at? What are people talking about? A huge fur-covered hound with glowing red eyes that just goes back through folklore. So with everything, all the ingredients that you spoke about there, Josh, you're actually on the money with, because you're right. And as I say, the Norse influence, we've got places in those forests, like the warg is a name. It's not just come from Tolkien. It's Norse. It means it's the wolf. The warg. And what we've got Warsman's head, and we only have to replace a a few letters, we've got a place called Warsman's Head, and it becomes, or a letter, and it becomes Wolfman's Head. And is that because of the werewolf? Not necessarily, but we've got so many things that link back to the wolf, you know. And you said what, 900 to 1100. Back in 937 AD at Flixton, that was the time that the refuge was built, where the then King Athelstan,
yeah.
he created. Yeah, you know, when we say these things, Josh, but you know, we have to stress that these were real kings. These aren't just things that Paul Sinclair's made up or Josh Turner. These things are laid down in history. And although the ancient peoples, the peoples from our past, may have worded it different, it's still the same. We're still dealing with the same ingredients. So 937 AD, 1,086 years ago, this refuge was built in Flixton. And it was built to protect travellers from an infestation of wolves. So, yeah, we've done this one before. We know that wolves would have existed back then. Certainly no bears. They'd gone 1,500 to 2,000 years prior to that. But the writing continues, from an infestation of wolves and savage beasts, lest they be devoured. So the writing goes, what were the savage beasts? You know, we can play with it and sort of, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing else. We're in the United Kingdom. We didn't have big cats. Like I said, bears had gone. So we've got wolves and an infestation of savage beasts. And where do we have this infestation of savage beasts? Flixton. Where did the stories originate for the first books that I wrote? And the root of all of this, where did it begin? Flixton. Interestingly, the refuge that was built was called Carman's Spittal, meaning hospital, refuge. And car is nothing to do with the motor vehicle. It's CARR, because car represents reeds and elder and wetlands. And he's still there. The foundations of the old refuge. There's now a farmhouse built on it, and they've converted the farmhouse now to an inn. So it's the Spittal Inn at Flixton. And we're jumping straight back to Wolfland. One of our witnesses, a lady who was driving home with her husband and 2 children back in, I think it was 2018. She's approaching the roundabout. She's on the main road. Her husband's driving. And from this roundabout, this sort of, we're not talking about a built-up area. It's the A9, I can't remember it, A910, I think. I'll have maybe got this wrong, but there's only one road into Flixton and one road out. They're just coming down to the roundabout. 30 yards away from the roundabout sits the Spittal Inn. And she sees this huge, she said it was as big as a small pony, on the roundabout. There's a light on it. There's all pine trees on the roundabout. It's a fairly big one. And she sees this thing kind of crouched down. She thinks it were looking at something, maybe food, or she just can't believe what she's seen. Jaw drop moment. When she passes it, she asks her husband to stop the car. She tells him she's seen something unusual. They turn round. She said, lock all the doors, and they drive round the roundabout several times. There's nothing there. She'd seen it as she's in the passenger seat and he's driving. There's nothing there, but it's interesting. It's 30 yards, if that, from the Spittal Inn. So are we looking at some kind of, I don't know, tracing, some kind of ghost that's on a repetitive loop from the past? And is that the reason why the gamekeeper in the forests of Stape and Cropton didn't see any leg movement, and this thing just kind of appeared, and as I don't know, over hundreds of years, dropping into thousands of years? Are these things getting weaker and weaker, just like a recording or a film that you send on a constant loop to different people and you lose a bit of quality? I suppose we could play with that idea temporarily, because then if we jump to the Forest of Broxer, what they saw seemed very physical. They could hear it breathing. So yeah, you know, the bar guest, the bear guest, the bear man. I don't think I missed a trick by not including the potential that this thing could be some kind of. We know that bears can go bipedal. We know that they can walk on 2 legs, but it's not their comfortable position. These things, whatever they are, what people are seeing and reporting, seem quite fluid and in their movement. Even if you don't see leg movement, they seem comfortable on 2 legs. I don't think we've got a bear wandering about in the forests of North Yorkshire or on the lonely cliff tops. But it's interesting that what we're doing as what we all do as human beings is we're fitting it into a box that kind of makes sense to us, because it makes a lot more sense to suggest it's a bear, even if we don't think there could be one in UK, than something so as terrifying as what people depict in horror movies, a werewolf. That's just my take on it. And then are we dealing with ghosts of the past? Are we dealing with legend from Viking lore? Everything, all the ingredients are there. The people in Broxer Forest, the three men in Broxer, they had to go into a ravine, or they descended a 700-foot ravine to the bottom where the River Derwent ran, and they spent a few nights. Oh well, they spent one night in there. They intended spending a few nights in there, and before this thing even showed itself, Josh, we'll call him Witness 3, because there's only 2 of them gone on film, but before it even showed itself, he knew it was there. And so we've got another element to this that's taken us away from the normal flesh and blood creature. And they said we'd got there quite late. They'd travelled about 120 miles from their home, parked in the forest on one of the logging roads, and descended into this ravine. He said there was no way we could get out. Not in the early hours of the morning. He says in some places we'd come down on us backsides with his rucksacks and all his gear. We knew where we were going. Jimmy had done a bit of a recce and sort of found this remote location, because it is remote. It's wild and remote. And he said we couldn't get out. He said night time had fallen. We'd got the fire going. Yet witness number 3 is saying, "We've got to go. There's something watching us. I don't like it." These are 3 men who've got no interest whatsoever in unexplained phenomena, in the cryptids, absolutely nothing. They'd come to spend a few days out in the wild, away from their families, maybe do a bit of fishing, drink a few beers, I don't know, but they'd come to just get away from everything. And it got so intense with this witness that they thought were going to run away into the darkness in fear, that Jim, because there's Jim and Steve who've gone on film, so I don't mind naming those 2, he said I stood up, took a few paces and swished my arms about, made a few hissing sounds, because a pair of huge amber eyes lit up in the darkness. And he held his fists out. He said, as big as my fist and human shaped, about 36, 40 inches off the ground. He said, I couldn't think of an animal to assign these eyes to. And I made all these noises and shouts, and the eyes disappeared. Turned back to my friends, to Steve and number 3, witness number 3 as we'll call him, and the jaws had dropped. Had absolute looks of horror on the faces. And when I turned back, from being 36 to 40 inch off the ground, these eyes had now rose, and I'm looking at something well over 7 foot in the air. Well, I went back, Josh, with a surveyor's tape to measure how far away from this thing they were, because I've been in the forest since with them, and we've got an idea where their camp was exactly, and to the trees where it stood. It was about 35 to 40 feet away from them, just off the forest path, and we put a white tape on where they estimated its eyes to be, and that was 87 inches. So we'd have forehead and ears and everything, because there was no mistaking what these guys could see. No full moon. We've got a full moon that figures in some of these. I'll jump back to the account in a moment, but I've got a full moon that figures in one of these accounts, but I've got no research that says there has to be a full moon when these things are seen. I think we'll save that for movies. But he said there was a bit of moonlight, he said, and we could see it defined in the moonlight. And he said his ears were ridiculous. He said, if you'd have asked me to draw, well, Steve did, if you would have asked me to draw a werewolf, I would not have drawn that, what we were looking at. He said its ears looked too big. They were stuck bolt upright. He said there were tufts of fur at the top of its ears that we could see. Every so often it would turn to the right, he said, and its muzzle looked almost like Wile E. Coyote. It was ridiculously long. He said, and this thing, it's there. It's well over 7 foot tall, and he said it's built like you just can't imagine. I love using the analogies that the witnesses give. He says, and you could have fitted two and a half men into it. It was so broad, it was huge, and you could see all these tufts of shaggy fur coming off its shoulders and arms, but at the same time you'd got this kind of shape that's depicting deltoids and huge arms and chest. And I said to him, do you think it was kind of paranormal, or was it physical? What do you think? What were you looking at? And he said, well, it had to be real. It had to be. I said, why? He said, because we could hear it. At first we thought it was growling. He said, because there was such power coming from it. He said, and then we realized it was its breathing. We could hear it breathing. And witness number 3 is absolutely terrified. And they all are. They're looking at this thing that literally could just, it's life ending. It's that big. If it wanted to, yeah, it didn't. Steve's words were that in the end he couldn't look at it. He just got it in his peripheral, and these self-luminous eyes. How does that work, Josh, as well? You'll have come across this in your work. And these eyes are glowing, these big amber eyes. He said, and I just wanted it to be over. I said, what do you mean? He says, I don't care how it ended. I wanted it to be over. It was so frightening. Daytime slowly seeps into the forest. Anybody who's ever woken up in a forest will know what I'm saying. It's a fabulous experience. If you're awake and the forest starts to wake up, and suddenly you become aware that the day's creeping in, and this thing had gone, but it hadn't quite gone. You know, I'm not backtracking here, because witness number 3, as they're packing up, said it's still here. It's still watching us. The other 2 hadn't picked up on it. They'd not, until we got talking. I said, well, there's clearly some kind of communication taking place. Is this what we call mind speak? I don't know. Because he obviously perceived it. He obviously knew that this thing was there. I mean, I've been in this little bit of forest, because it's a ravine that sits between forests, many times, alone and with other people. I've not spent the night in there alone. And whilst walking the edge of the River Derwent, I went to the other side of the river, and it weren't flowing sort of rapidly. I could cross it jumping on stones, and I managed to get across. But this particular day, I was with a guy called Chris Wright, and it's pretty steep in places, the sides that cut through the Derwent. As I'm walking, I did see a big black shape just slip away. Or dark shape. I need to correct myself there. Dark shape. And I put it down to a deer. All I saw was the side of it, but I didn't see legs or anything. And I remember telling Chris about it. I said, I've just seen a big shape there, but I'm not saying that I've witnessed what these people are witnessing. But when you get into this location, I should imagine, just like a lot of the places overseas, they're very remote. They're very dense with vegetation. You've got the blackthorn and all sorts of things to get through, and it's tough going. So you can understand, if we were talking about the flesh and blood creature, how something could remain hidden. It's also very steep, and you'd have to be good on your feet and fast to move through this. But I still don't see it. I still see this as a more paranormal, supernatural type thing we're dealing with, Josh. And I probably diverted from your question there. I'm sorry about that, but I still see it as a more supernatural thing, simply because we're a tiny island, and if these things exist, the amount of calories that it would need to consume per day to sustain itself, and there'd have to be more than one to actually advance through time. There'd have to be I don't know, a scientist could probably tell us how many there'd need to be to sustain and be seen through over all these hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. But there'd be carnage on not just on the wildlife, but on livestock as well. There'd be absolute carnage. So those kind of things rule it out being some kind of normal flesh and blood creature for me here in the UK.
Yeah, that's a good point, because as many sightings of these creatures as we have, like just in central Texas, to add to your point about the amount of calories that these things would need to consume on a daily basis, Paul, we have a serious problem with feral hogs here in this part of Texas. And we were probably, if these cryptids, these canine upright creatures were just animals, then we probably wouldn't
You
have
wouldn't
a
have a
problem
problem.
with feral
Yeah.
hogs, you know?
Yeah, we have.
yeah, you make a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
I think we've got wild boar here, but we don't have a problem with them. But you make
Yeah,
an
they're a
absolutely
menace
brilliant
over
point.
here. We have kind of like an open season to like hunt them all year round because they're just so destructive, and they breed so well. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
actually
but-
legal here in Texas to get in a helicopter and just shoot at them with like automatic weapons. It's not illegal.
mhm.
They're,
In Texas,
they're that
um,
bad.
Are they good eating, or do you just do they?
Oh
just get
yeah, I
shot?
mean,
I mean, some people eat them, but I've never actually had wild boar. I would imagine it's probably very tough meat, and you'd probably have to stew it for a very long time. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never tried it.
or
Yeah,
that's a great point, Dave. That it might be like that, and the hog problem should be worse, but they're actually calling it, and this is where it's at now.
which
Well,
which
then in
kind
that-
of makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
just, go ahead.
no, far away. I'm butting in. You go for it.
Oh no, I was just saying, that if the buffalo can almost go extinct, from just from human predation, and I think that at the very least in the context of Central Texas, the wild boar would go almost extinct if these upright canines were just flesh and blood animals. I mean, that to maintain that size. It's just, I mean, you would have to eat an incredible amount of food on a daily basis. It would just be crazy.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I think at the average human, what do we consume? About 2,500, 2,700 calories a day.
Mm-hmm.
And these things, they've got to be looking at 8,000, 12,000 calories a day. So
Yeah.
there'd be carnage. And I mean, and I know primarily we're talking about the werewolf, but if we jump to the Sasquatch,
Yeah.
then the movement of this thing and the shape of it is primarily endomorphic. So it's not athletic looking. Yet we hear about them traveling at incredible speeds, which fascinates me because they're not the descriptions that we're given don't warrant something that can travel at an incredible speed. I know we've got land animals here. I suppose the elephants and things can travel. They're fairly quick, and look at the size of them. But everything seems to rule out for me that we're dealing with a bog standard creature. But they're not just seen in the forests. We start to get a few more urban sightings, and we've even got one on a military base at Prestwick, which is a fair way away from me, but it's an historic account. A lady contacted me and wanted to share with me, and do you want me to tell you about this one?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, she contacted me. We'll call her Lucy, and she contacted me and she said, "Have you ever heard of the Prestwick baboon?" So I'm throwing that name out, people, so you'll be able to Google it because there'll be information out there about it from 1999. And I had not heard of this. And she said, "Well, I can tell you now, it weren't a baboon. It was a werewolf." And she went on and I spoke to her, and she gave me this really detailed account and sent me quite a few emails. And we'll call her Lucy. And she said back in 1999, she was 18 years old. And she worked as a trainee administrator at British Aerospace, which is in Moncton, Prestwick, Scotland. So way miles away from where I do the research, but I think it's such a fascinating account. She said back then in 1999, it was a military compound, and they had HMS Gannet in the compound, and it was separated by fencing and armed guards. She said that they also had the Sea-King helicopter rescue helicopters there. They were based there, and RAF and Navy personnel. So pretty secure unit by any standard. It's not like somebody just guarding a cabin in a forest or anything. For me, it makes it even more interesting that this thing were actually documented in newspapers back then. And it were close. it were a military restricted area, and it went very close to Prestwick Airport. And her encounter, she says, happened around 7:15 a.m. on a cold, dark January morning as she walked back towards the security gate to the office where she worked. She said it usually took her about, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes. And as soon as she started walking, she knew she was being watched. Now, once again, we're jumping back. It's almost like Steve's witness number 3 in Broxer Forest saying, we're being watched. I don't like it. And you'll have had many accounts like that, I'm sure, Josh, where people have perceived these things before they actually make their presence known. And she said at some point during that journey, this 8 to 10 minute journey to where she were going to enter her office and do some work, she heard a very loud crashing noise over to her right. Whatever it was, it came. She said it came from the trainee apprentice block, and she said I stopped dead in my tracks. I didn't know what it was. Early morning, she's not expecting to see what she saw. She said then a few moments later, she noticed a strange shape appear at the doors, and of an old wooden shed close to it. She said. This big bulky shape that's sort of not on 2 legs. And this shed joined the apprentice block. Now her initial thoughts were that someone had fallen and that's what had caused commotion, and it looked like they were crawling out of the shed. She said she thought somebody had got injured. That's what she thought initially. So she took a few steps closer, and the shape made a weird noise. This is her words. Not a human noise. It was a growl. Obviously, she's froze. She realised it wasn't a person. And she said it looked like a huge dog. And she tried to, what we all do, fit it into a box that makes sense. She said, like a Newfoundland dog, as in shape and the bulk of the fur. And she explained that a friend had one and they were massive dogs. So that's what immediately came to mind. She looked around. She remembers that there's nobody else was there. There was no one about. And she's kind of looking at this. It's making this growling noise, and it's not exactly up on all fours. It's sort of crawling out of the shed. So as she looks around, she looks back a few seconds later, and it's standing upright. It's on 2 legs, and it's a lot closer than before. She says maybe 5 meters away from her, and it's huge. And God knows, I can't imagine how she would have felt. She described it as standing slightly hunched over, but it must have been 7 foot tall even in that stance. She told me she was about 5'3". A total giant compared to her. It had pointy ears at the top of its head, she said, and it had dark fur and a massive frame and huge shoulders. I asked her about its eyes. Its eyes didn't glow yellow, but its face was like something, her words, from something out of the American Werewolf in London. So terrifying for an 18-year-old girl to see this, and she'd kept this story with her all these years, and she was frightened even talking to me about it, and just reliving experience. She said it had arms that hung down by its side like human arms, and at the end of the hands were claws. I'd say body were massive. It had a tiny waist, which, once again, her words, which was a bit weird, because I suppose after, I don't know, replaying over what you've seen in your mind, it's something that almost cartoonish. It's freakish that you're not expecting to see. Very muscular at the top, very long arms, and she can't remember its feet. Its legs were muscular at the top, thin at the bottom, and she cannot remember its feet. Right, so like she's just said, it sounds like something from the film The American Werewolf in London. I made comparisons to this, to what we'd called the Fangman of Forden and Staxton, which I can touch on. I've only written about it once. If you want to, we can touch on that in a while. And there's even stories. I mean, this is close to a military base, Josh, and there's even stories of somebody on a quad bike doing a patrol at Fylingdales claiming to have seen something very similar to this. Obviously, Fylingdales is hundreds of miles away from this military compound, but once again, we've got a military base on the North Yorkshire Moors area, Fylingdales. So there's comparisons. She said it started to sniff the air, and when she's saying this, she's telling me, she's still giving me chills talking about it and thinking about it. She said she didn't move. She couldn't have moved even if she'd have wanted to. She was frozen at spot, absolutely rigid in fear, and then it began to growl at her. So we've got something that big, young girl, 18 years old, sat on this story. She told me this account. She gave it to me probably about 3 years ago. And apart from close friends, I don't even think she's told her family. I think there were a good reason for that. I think one of the members of her family worked there. She said at that point she remembers the hairs on her arms and at the back of her neck was standing up almost. There was an electrical field to it, and she felt like she could hear a pin drop. So we've descended once again. We've got these supernatural elements that seem to run through all aspects of unexplained phenomena. This is what I call the lower silence. That's the term I use for it. I know people say the Oz factor, but where everything, you're sort of immersed in this bubble of strangeness. And that's what had taken place. She said, she felt like everything was so quiet she could have heard a pin drop. She said it was like a standoff, and the standoff broke when she heard the noise of the mail buggy, like the little four-wheeler carrying the mail. It drives about back and front of the building, and that's where the internal mail centre were. It were driving towards that. She said this thing obviously heard it as well, and it turned quickly to the side and made another growling noise, except it were louder, like a snarl, like it was really, like it were pissed off. That's it. It weren't happy. She were probably happy that this noise had taken place because it's kind of broke this spell, this standoff that were taking place. She said it must have slightly opened its mouth because she could see huge incisors hanging down, great big teeth just hanging down from its jaw. Once again, we could kind of touch on this, the Fang Man. That's why I likened it to it of Staxton and Forden in a moment, and the car chaser. And if I forget that, somebody just remind me about what we're talking about. She said then it took an 180-degree turn, and it took a huge leap and landed on all fours and disappeared behind a storage container. And that was the last that she saw of this creature. But it's something that must have clearly put the military on high alert. She says during that day there were weird goings on, helicopters flying low, HMS Gannet security going about, because she worked at aerospace, which were connected to it, going about aerospace in trucks, armed personnel. She'd already decided she wasn't going back for the rest of the week, so she pretended she were ill. She had rest at week off. Later that week, a mum come rushing into the house because she's in shock. She's traumatized by what she's seen. She's not told mum and dad. Mum comes running into the house with holding local newspaper shouting, "There's been a baboon, a huge baboon spotted at Prestwick Airport." And upon hearing this, she says, I almost fell off my chair. She said, what? She kind of asked, and sure enough, the local newspapers were talking about people seeing this huge baboon. She couldn't believe it herself. And she said to me, she said, they didn't mean a baboon. She said, I know what it was. I saw it up close and personal. And this, in her words, was a werewolf. So it made the local papers. So there's still going to be information out there about this. So I just thought I'd throw that one in because even though it's not close to my area of research, I think it's a fascinating account that just shows that these things are able, what it's some kind of military experiment or military captive even, who can say. I don't know if you've got reports of them in or around military complexes or installations, Josh, but
we talked about it earlier.
Mhm.
We were
Really?
talking about that earlier. Where were we at, Anthony? It was you and I and Nelly talking about it. We were talking
Where were
about
we?
some military bases, Air Force bases.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nelly
yeah,
was
Air
talking
Force
about
bases.
Edwards Air Force Base. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about Kelly, Lackland, and Randolph over in San Antonio. Yeah, and then we ended up talking about Fort Sam. Yeah, power plants, military installations, it all seems to be, like relative. I mean, I don't know. We have gotten multiple reports from people we had one person from Fort Benning tell us something very odd, which I can't substantiate, but it was Bigfoot like. And then we
Right.
had Bergstrom Air Force Base at one time. There were stories of Bigfoot type creatures. And Fort Hood, we've heard of stories of Dogman, Bigfoot, and even reptilian type creatures. Also, little people like Duende and things like that, all around these bases. What you were talking about earlier, just to clarify, you were talking about the fly agaric, which is like a Celtic name, but it's actually
It's the Amanita
Amanita
muscara.
muscara, and that's that
Okay.
red cap type, and that's interesting because it's got those two names, and that's interesting because that was a plant that was used by Celts and Vikings, and both of them, of course, they would berserk, and the Celts, I mean, God, they would paint themselves blue and fight, in the nude.
Yeah,
And,
you
and,
don't
and
do
they,
that.
they were like in the spirit world, doing this stuff. I mean, they were,
I,
that
I
mushroom.
wonder how many people. I wonder how many people they had to test it on, Josh, before they realised, how many people died before they perfected it, that they could actually consume this hallucinogenic without dying.
Yeah, and it's also just really interesting how they got to that point because I mean, me and Wolf was talking earlier about like how do they figure out that if you close one eye, you'll see something, but it's like
Yeah.
how do they figure out that if I just drink this reindeer's urine, this will
Do you think
do
it's an
this?
ancient knowledge
Yeah.
that's somehow been
I
imparted to them, or do
definitely
you think
think
it's
that.
trial and error?
I think they
know,
just tried everything around.
I don't believe that. I believe it is ancient knowledge, and I'll tell you why. I believe that we are our ancestors. I think our history goes back so far that if you went back to our origins, there's origins for those origins, and there's origins for those origins, and it keeps going. And I believe that
Yeah.
somewhere down the line it was passed on because your liver actually processes this poison and then it goes into your kidneys. Now, a lot of times that's where the problem comes. But there are animals who can digest and eat this stuff, and they probably also a little bit of both saw the reindeer doing it, and it didn't hurt them. And of course, they probably didn't really know whether it was being pooped out or peed out, and they figured it out. I mean, because it was probably passed down that you could filter stuff through your kidneys. Like, how would the Vikings know that? How would the Celts
That's what I'm
know
saying. It's like how would someone start?
Well, you also got to
drinking milk?
realize, though, the Romans who got their history from the Greeks, and this is an interesting sidelight here. If you want to learn a little bit of history, where did the Romans get most of their knowledge? Their knowledge of the gods, the solar system, star, whatever. They got it from the Greeks.
Mhm.
You know, and the Etruscans, and where did they get it from? And then it goes on and on. The
It just
Minoans.
constantly builds on top of each other.
Well, Plato.
Yeah.
Plato talks about Atlantis. He said that was the hub of knowledge and the center of learning. The Greeks, the Minoans, their predecessors, got their knowledge from the Atlanteans. Whether you believe it or not, that's the truth. And the Atlanteans were the hub of knowledge. Any connection we have to Atlantis was destroyed in the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Next to Christ being born and being on earth, I think the most important single aspect that ever happened to us in our history going back several thousand years, I think as far as it goes. I think that the burning of the Library of Alexandria. I don't think it was an accident either. I think that it was this cult that did it. And I think they did it under the guise of just they wanted to destroy the knowledge. And I think that it goes back to the cult of Set. And I know that the Romans did everything they could under Augustus to stamp it out. In fact, Augustus sent troops into Alexandria, which was the capital at that time, and in Cairo and different places where, in the Crescent Valley, to stamp this out. And what they were doing was kidnapping children and sacrificing them. And that was a problem. And so the Egyptians were like, look, you have the power here in our country. Do something about these people. And they did. And but I think that there was something to this cult that I think that it ran like concurrent. It never ended. I think it just became, like the Rosicrucians, and then it became the Knights Templar, and then it became the Masons, and it just keeps going on. Now, I have friends that are Masons, but there is something that happens when you get to a certain degree, and then you're asked to do something, and then that decides. And I think that there is a shadow movement within that organization, just like I believe that they are in our governments too. And I think that what you see on the surface is not the deep, dark, deep whatever you're getting. And I think that it goes back way, way back. And I believe that this cult is still in operation today, and know that it's here in the United States, the cult of Set. And I know that it runs kind of like parallel to Moloch. And I know that these beings, they all kind of ask for the same thing. The reason that those cults, and this is kind of diverging from what we're talking about here, but just to lay the information out there, your pineal gland begins to calcify as you get older, and you no longer have that ability. As you're a child, you have that ability, and that's why they want children. These demons, these creatures, whatever, they want children. I think that one of the things that people overlook when talking about or dealing with these beings is that they're evil. And I really don't believe, even when they're being nice for whatever reason, it's only to get something. There is no, and I don't think,
right.
yeah, I believe they're evil. I don't think that there's any real good ones out there. And the big mistake that people are making in the Bigfoot community is this sort of dabbling in this, like, oh, let's gift them, let's give them this, let's give them that. No, you don't do that. And I'm telling you right now, don't gift any of them anything. Don't do it. Don't deal with them. And now I'm going to say this too. Are they flesh and blood, or are they spirit? They're both. There is a flesh and blood element to the Bigfoot phenomena and the Dogman, but they're also very, very able to move in and out of the spirit, like we are not able to, because they come from a higher dimension. Now, we can look at the two-dimensional world and see it clearly. The fourth dimension can do the same thing with the third dimension, and so on and so forth. And I think that these things exist, a right angle from a right angle. I believe that's the truth. And I believe that they can manipulate space and time in a way that we can't. Whether they do it, it's an innate ability or something that they learn, I don't know. But there is this movement and this push in this community to sort of beat down and anybody who believes that they've had a spiritual encounter with something like this, that it's just poppycock. But I don't believe that. Now, I do believe that there are flesh and blood creatures, and they're coming from the inner earth. Some of them have been there for a long, long time, and I think that some of them have been genetically modified or engineered. And it's really impossible to know the difference. All I know is that it's like different gangs like we deal with all the time on some of our job sites. I don't care whether you're a Crip or a Blood or a Latin King. If you come into my territory where I'm supposed to be protecting, you're an enemy. If you stay to yourself and you leave me alone, then you're not an enemy. Just leave me alone. You go your way, I go mine. These things can be a part of whatever they want to be a part of. But when they come into my AO, my area of operation, then automatically you are an enemy. And I look at that as such. And I call upon my higher power, which is Christ, to deal with these things. And that's worked for me. And I believe that it'll work for most people. See, Agent Smith says not all Bigfoot are evil. Some are. Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. There's a lot of people that will agree with that statement, that'll say that there are evil and that there are good. But how do you know? It's like pit bulls. There was a lady who had, it was a Canes Corso was in her car earlier. We saw it. Mm-hmm. That dog may be a very friendly one, but that breed is prone to being very hyper aggressive. It is literally like a mastiff bred with a pit bull, a large breed of pit bull bred with a mastiff, English mastiff. So when you go up to one of those dogs, you don't know what you're going to get. Has that person raised it to be a guard dog, or has that person let it be feral, or has that person taught it manners, or is it a trainable dog, and what kind of personality does it have? You don't know. You're putting your life at risk
Yeah.
So why would you take a chance on one of these creatures? Oh, this is probably a good one. His eyes aren't red.
I mean, it's like, okay, most people, if you just take a regular animal, let's take a silverback gorilla, most people are not going to go up to that thing and to that giant animal on the off chance that it's not feeling aggressive, that it's not really mad, and that it's not going to tear you to pieces.
What?
Like, you know,
That sounds
so
absolutely insane, Anthony.
let's take that same logic and apply it to like a 7 to 15 foot tall, Sasquatch. Just stay away from it. Err on the side of caution. And these things take the form of an apex predator for a reason. It's not to be your friend. It may not always be to be your enemy and to maul you, but it's definitely not to be your friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think people make this mistake, and I've seen it quite a bit times, where they'll judge every encounter they like the entire cryptid basically based on their own encounter. And Paul, you said something earlier that I really liked, was that even though we're in the U.S. and you're in the U.K., you still see a bunch of similarities in the behavioral that you'll see, like for instance when they're around graveyards or things of the sort. And I really like that, because that's how you're supposed to look at everything. You're not supposed to look at it like, oh, I had a good encounter with a Dogman. It came up and we cooked dinner together and we had a good conversation. So that means all Dogmen are like that, and they're all great cooks and they all know about philosophy. It's like, that's not how that works. You got lucky. Not everybody is able to get lucky. Stop putting other people's lives at risk because you believe that they share the same luck that you do, and it's an unfortunate thing to happen, or is an unfortunate occurrence, that where someone will go out there thinking that butterflies and rainbows are going to be coming out of Dogmen, and then they get attacked, and then they think, oh, like, I wish someone would have told me that they're dangerous. Everybody, I mean, it's these people that aren't telling you they're dangerous that are incorrect, and I actually do like that. I'm seeing a bigger change now to where people are less of like, oh, they're all friendly or they're all good, to where now it's just like, oh, they're kind of evil, but you might catch a good one every now and then. Or
On a good day.
Yeah, like it's switching to where now people are recognizing that these things should be treated with caution at all times.
I'm 100% with you on that at all times. It's kind of like when, I don't know, you watch a documentary and there's some woman or man swimming with a great white shark, and they're touching it, and they're almost like daring it, aren't they? Sooner or later that you're just dealing with. We're going to read or hear that someone's been eaten.
Well, I mean,
because go on, sorry.
Go ahead. You were talking.
No. These things primarily, I don't think there's anything good, and for the people that say it's all, we'll jump to the UFO scenarios temporarily. It's all love and light. You got people claiming that they've had these euphoric experiences. Maybe they have, but they don't want to talk. They don't want to listen or entertain the person that's saying, no, I've had bad experiences. These type of things have happened. It's almost like they're closed off to it. I can accept that there might be good experiences, but there's far more bad experiences. And I'm not a guy that wants to live in the negative, but the plain truth is that it's out there, and you've got organizations like MUFON. No axe to grind with MUFON, people. If you're in the chat now and you're listening and you're a member of MUFON, but you're all missing a trick, or a lot of the people are missing a trick, the ones that are vocal, because you're looking at the UFO phenomena, and a lot of the times there's cryptid phenomena associated with these areas as well. Sometimes in close proximity to where the UFO has been seen, people are claiming to have seen cryptids, but nobody wants to talk about it because it doesn't fit in with the narrative that you want to run with. Can't possibly be associated with the UFO. Now, Paul Sinclair, myself, I don't know what the connection is, and I know we've jumped from what we were talking about, but just because it doesn't fit with what you're wanting to research doesn't mean that we shouldn't be researching it. It's there. This multi-phenomena aspect is there that many things are presenting. So as regards the cults and the ancient knowledge, Josh, and you're saying, like, as you get to a certain level in some organizations, I will say, you get some of this knowledge is imparted to you. I think that is true. Not necessarily. I don't know about the Masons, but I know that very close to where I've been researching, there's a disused RAF base, RAF Bempton, which came in the 1940s to the area and closed in 1970. After it closed, it was used by a satanic cult. And I'm not saying that they were using it to evoke some kind of cryptid phenomena or connect with the great unknown and the UFOs, but they were trying to connect with something. And if you go, it's all below ground. It's an underground, but it sounds nice to call it a complex. It's a huge Type 1 rotor radar base, but it's all burnt out and trashed now underground. And it's, once again, a little bit of a disclaimer for anybody in area, it's sealed off, and I wouldn't advise anybody to go there. But there's satanic graffiti all over the walls underground. I went in it in 1990s when it was open and before it got sealed off. And it's not, these aren't just people with spray cans, teenagers. This is really good artwork, and there's tetragrams on walls and all sorts of things adorning these walls. But more importantly, I was told that the cult, the people that were operating down there, late 70s, 80s, were trying to summon demons. Fascinating that this dark world exists. I mean, I get on these cliff tops now, Josh, deep in the night, and there's nobody but myself on these cliff tops and maybe a couple of people who come with me. So back in the 70s, it would have been even more isolated, 70s, early 80s. And we've got this underground radar base which sits on the edge of the North Sea in the middle of nowhere, and we've got these people that were said to be trying to summon demons. What did they tap into? Did they summon anything, or did they witness the phenomena that's presenting on these cliff tops and think that they've tapped into this unknown realm, or is it a combination of both? I know we're just throwing lots of hooks out there and sort of testing the ground, because we don't know, unless we've been part of that group, what the actual truth of all this was, what they were actually trying to connect with. But it's fascinating that they were there, and they were in the heart of this strange area where the cryptids are being seen. And you touched on the fact that you think that they're supernatural and they've got the ability to live between worlds, and I'm totally with you on that. And they are flesh and blood, and they are substance at some points when they're here, but that's their attribute. They can actually live between worlds. I've spoken to American Indians and about the skinwalker and asked their views. In particular, I don't know whether he still gets on the internet, Larry Sespooch, who's got a vast knowledge of the skinwalkers. He lived quite not close to Skinwalker Ranch as well, incidentally, and that's what he believes. He believes that these things are creatures that have the ability to live between worlds. So it's fascinating that I think I don't mean that I'm necessarily right or you're right, but I think we're on the same page in the direction that we think this is running. And whatever it is that we're dealing with is far more than a flesh and blood creature. And the military connection, the fact that these things are seen around remote military bases, RAF Fylingdales, the early warning system for the UK, really, the main place probably connected to the USA as well, because if you take Fylingdales out, you've literally cut off a big knowledge base that's going to warn the rest of the world. But interestingly, we've got reports of somebody patrolling Fylingdales, which is on the remote moors, by the way. Just, you can see it from these forests where we've been researching. You can see the radar heads, and somebody patrolling in a 4x4, a quad bike, comes across one of these creatures. Then we've got RAF Staxton Wold, which I didn't touch on earlier, Josh, that Flixton and Staxton Wold are literally together. Flixton's a tiny village, so where these stories of the Flixton werewolf originated, you've got Staxton Wold at the side of it. Staxton, literally a mile would consume both villages. And at the top of Staxton Wold, up on this hill, you've got the radar base. The RAF Staxton Wold, the oldest operational radar base in the world, that's there. It's sat on not the ruins, because it's not there now, but it's sat on land that was once used as a Roman hill fort. So everything's got an ancient history. And what have we got? Reports of the Flixton werewolf. I got one report of squaddies walking back during the night up through the woods to the RAF base and encountering some. They didn't say a werewolf, they didn't say a Bigfoot, something covered in fur and bipedal traveling back to the base. But once again, we've got these military connections. And is it the high energy output? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, I think that you said something about near power plants, these things have been seen as well. I don't know. Do you have any reports of them seen near waterworks and water plants?
Actually,
Because
we actually had a story.
Yeah.
Tony can tell that one by heart.
Pretty recently, yeah.
Yeah, that was one
Really?
where we met with the guy. It was me, Tony, Scorpion, and D. We all went and met this guy who worked as I guess cop, part-time security. Yeah. And long story short, people on the show that already know, they've heard it before, but I don't think I've ever talked to you, Paul. Me and you've talked. We've talked quite a bit, but I know that we interviewed this guy. Now he lives in Arizona. Is that where he moved to?
I can't remember.
Well, I think last
yeah.
it was Arizona. Then he moved again. I think he moved again. I think he's like back in New Mexico or something. But
Yeah.
he moved because he was at a water treatment plant, and the lake is right there. What's interesting about that is that on the very first episode of our show, the very first one we did it in our friend Armando's garage. the sound was terrible. It was just awful quality.
It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous, and it took us 6 hours to do 1 hour show.
Yeah, I mean, we were just
What we
sitting
were
there.
doing. But I told a story that was given to us by someone who had claimed to have had a goat man encounter, which is literally the restroom where they were at is right next door to that water treatment plant because there's a campground right there. And when I was like given the story, I didn't know how close they were. We were out there driving around looking. I'm like, that's right next to it. And my mother had helped build that water treatment plant because she was working for that company that did that at that time. And she had told us, remember, Anthony, when we were in Pinehurst visiting when my mother was still alive and we were at my sister's.
Yeah.
And she was saying that there was the guys were there telling her that something had hung a deer up at a tree.
Mhm.
And that there were these large canine tracks. Very weird. And I really lament the fact that my mother was ill quite a bit off and on for the first couple of years of my show, and then she passed away. But when she was well, she was living down in Houston, and or in Tomball, and I wanted to go down and visit her and record with her because she had stuff to talk about, stuff to say about these creatures. And she believed, what did she say? She believed they were down there by the creek where my cousin, it's in my book, where my distant cousin had been chased across a bridge, Mustang Creek. And she believed that they howled the night that my uncle died. And she thought that it was like they were almost like rejoicing, she thought they were evil. And she didn't like to talk about them. And she was very, very, very like adamant that I shouldn't be talking about them.
Well, it's a Mexican in there.
Yeah, the Mexican culture is like, you don't talk about these things. You'll bring it up. Meanwhile, you don't want to talk about it.
It's almost like you're evoking it if you talk about it.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that. Yeah.
Well, I think there are certain things that like you speak the name and then they either recognize it or they will like understand that you did say that. But I don't think like every creature out there that you say their names, all of a sudden you're going to be haunted by them.
No.
They're going to appear. No, but it is fascinating though that you sometimes when you talk about things of an unexplained nature, just like you talk about an old friend that you've not seen for 10 years and suddenly he walks around the corner, it's almost like we know something's going to happen.
Yeah, you speak it into existence, kind of.
Yeah. I don't imagine we do literally, but makes you wonder if there's something within us that can perceive these things, some hidden, I don't know, long lost trait that we had. Do you know, when we made the documentary Wolflands, there were so many things, just like you talked about the water treatment plants, that we didn't add into it. We have reports, and once again, there's a water treatment plant at Flixton, and there's a report of somebody who works there seeing one of these things. And, there's so many ingredients. It's not just in UK that sort of cross over to the United States. All cultures and all countries around the world where we share similar beliefs and similar parallels to these, to what as and what these things are. And I don't know, we've not spoke about Wolflands, Josh. I'm not sure if you've watched it, have you? The
A little bit.
documentary.
I haven't got to delve into it like I'd like, but yeah, I caught some of it. And go ahead,
Well,
let's talk about it.
No, it's 3 years in making, and I think I was green as grass. I thought we were probably going to complete it in less than a year, but it's 3 years because we've done it on a shoestring, and it's what's amazing is it's on Amazon Prime now, and it's holding its own with all this kind of mainstream documentaries. You know, I think it got down to number 5 when there's lots and lots of films that are sort of far more important or to mainstream than what Wolflands is. But so we're quite proud of it. But you know, all the reports in it are all from first-hand witnesses, and some of your, I believe, some of your friends, Martin Groves, who tells the most incredible encounter that I've ever heard. I mean, he tells me he's watched it 3 times and absolutely thinks it's an amazing bit of work that we've done. So sorry for my shameless plug there for the documentary,
no,
Josh.
Not shameless at
I
all.
want to say something about that too. I was just talking to a local filmmaker named Eric Palacios, and you guys that are listening to the show, I'm gonna be recording with him soon, and you'll probably learn his name. Just like the same conversation I had with him. This is the same conversation I had with Joe Rimmensnyder and Brett Eichenberger. Same conversation I'm having with you, Paul Sinclair. Same conversation I had with Shannon LeGros, Heather Moser, all the people that are doing these smaller streaming documentaries. The same thing with Chris Garitano. I mean, this is the new way, folks. To me, the networks are going to. I'm not going to say they're going to go away because they're very big, strong, and powerful, and they have their purpose, whatever, which I don't care for. But these are the new. This is the new way. Streaming is going to become the way that we do things. You can go to Tubi, you can go to Netflix, you can go to Hulu, all these other different types of channels, whatever, or you can go to Amazon Prime. And there is a guy, like I said, Eric, who I talked to, and I was very impressed with this young man. I say young; he's in his 30s. That's young to me. I'm almost 50.
He's young to me.
Yeah, he's young to us. I mean,
that's an old dude. Jeez.
Yeah, geez, shut up, Tony. 12-year-old over here, this 20-year-old, whatever. No, but the thing is, what are you? You're 26, right?
25.
25. Okay, well, you're too young to be commenting. Be quiet. But what you did with Wolflands and what they're doing with Small Town Monsters, same thing Eric has done with The Beast of Brushy Creek, the same thing with Montauk Chronicles, The Dark Files, and Strange World with Chris Garitano. What you're seeing is the future, and it is now. This is what's happening. This is what's going to be. It's going to be the way that we view the world. People are going to make these documentaries, these docu-series, and hopefully I'll be there doing it eventually too. First, I have to have time to take away from my business, which is constant. Is a constant thing too. But I have to make time to do these things. Wrote the books. I'm doing the show, but this information, I want to get it out there. And I want it out there, and it's got to be people like us who spearhead these movements, these young and upcoming filmmakers, and these older guys like us who are catching on to how you're supposed to do it. I mean, sometimes we got to look at the younger generation and say, hey, they're doing it correctly, and I think that they're doing it right. I think that I watched American Werewolves. I thought that was a great documentary, Dogman Triangle, and I think that these people that are exploring these things, and I think that like the Beast of Brushy Creek is very interesting to me, and I can't wait to record with Eric because this stuff is happening right here in our neighborhoods, in our backyards. It's happening right here where we're at, just like where you're at in England. It's happening right there. I mean, you don't have to go far.
Talking about.
It needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and
you know what? Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Phil.
No, you're the guest.
Yeah, you're the guest. Go ahead.
Well, it needs a voice like yours, Josh. It needs a voice like ours. Not necessarily me, but researchers need to be putting this stuff out because, as you know, the more we put out, the more we're going to open that door, and people are going to come to us with more reports to add more meat to the bone of the true existence of these things. Because at the moment, although the UFO subject of UFOs is becoming more mainstream and more norm, the cryptid, the werewolf, dogman, whatever way you want to dress it up, the name wise, it's still behind. It's still the one where people are going to roll their eyes. It's, for me, it's the most difficult one to deal with, but it don't make it any less true. I mean, the guy who's made the film with me, Les Drake, he's done most of the editing. I've done a lot of the filming with him. All the witnesses have all been interviewed by me. 68. Les, I mean, and he came into the subject as a cameraman, not as a. But I'll tell you what, he's left after 3 years of making Wolflands as somebody who believes that this thing, this creature, this phenomena, whatever it is we're dealing with, is very real. After sat listening to these witnesses pour out their hearts. So when Josh Turner tells me that this is something he wants to do, I know that you not just can do it, I know you will do it, Josh. And you know what? You will get the right witness. You will get the people coming to you because they've got faith in the way you're just a real person. And I'm not trying to be nice to you here, Josh, but I like the way that you're sarcastic because it's in a good way. And I think, you know, you can relate to the real person. You're not some fancy film distributor or filmmaker who's just using it and thinking, well, you know, we might get a bit of a rise out of this one and we'll alter editing and we'll make these people look a bit ridiculous, because that's part of the reason that people haven't come forward over the years, not just for the cryptid, but for the UFO, the ghost phenomena, you know, all of these things, because the people involved in making the documentaries have put their slant on it. They've took the documentary, took the series into a direction that they want it to go. But now we've got boots on the ground researchers, not just myself. People like you're suggesting that you're going to look into this, or putting the correct light on onto the documentary. Do you know, we didn't pitch it to any major distributors, and we put it onto Amazon Prime, which, if you ever do this, Josh, I mean, unless you've got somebody who's in the know more than us, because that's my little dog, by the way, it's not me.
You're like, Paul's changing, huh?
I was looking around like, is that on our end? What is that?
Come on, Bob. What I'm saying is a massive learning curve for myself and Les Drake, sort of trying to get Wolflands actually onto the Amazon Prime platform, but it's there and it's going well. But what's interesting, we've had an offer from a major distributor. we never thought about pitching it because we thought, well, it's all filmed in 4K. It's all filmed with good quality cameras. But we never thought that we would get that kind of interest. But they've come to us. We're not going with them. We're staying where we are. Not just because Josh Turner said this is the future, but I believe you're right. It's been a learning curve, but now we've got over that sort of hurdle. We're moving along with it. He's off again. So yeah, Paul isn't changing people. He has this little breathing do odd times, and he sniffles and snorts a little bit. So where were we with that one?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you're entirely correct, and I think it's not just in, you know, paranormal at all. I think it's in every aspect. I think there's a lot of comedians who are stepping away from big networks.
Yeah, because you see who they are, and it's crazy. We've been watching TV and shows, and we know a bunch of people, and we're like, hey, that's a friend of ours.
Yeah.
And but we know a lot of people. But I mean, it's crazy when you watch, just like what I saw happen in the fight game. You got, like, what's his name, Danaher here, and
yeah, we got John Danaher, or Danaher, whatever, and Gordon Ryan. When you see those guys, you know, come to Austin, and it's like the fight game is like grown here, and it grew up organically. And when you see all these coaches and fighters and people that I've known for years, and now Austin's becoming a mecca for that, when in the past it was like you went to L.A. for everything, whether it was movies or, you know, there was the Lions. I believe Lions Den, wasn't it out of L.A.? Yeah, it was somewhere in California.
It was in California, in Huntington Beach, you know, and that's where Tank was, and all these guys that were fighting out of there, Tito Ortiz and all that. And then there were a few others, like I think the Militich guys, they went to Colorado, and then they filtered down here. But there were only certain places where you went to fight, you know. And now it's like everywhere. It's everywhere. You know, you can go to anywhere and fight with some of the world's greatest coaches, whether the jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. and it's making the world smaller, and it's bringing people together who at one time would never have ventured out of their own sphere or whatever. That's happening in this community. It's happened. I saw it happen in the fight community, and I've watched it grow. And you can like literally pick and choose now. You can go to many different types of martial arts academies here in Austin. You have filmmakers here in Austin, like Eric, and you have guys like Chris Garitano who filmed here in Austin. And it's easier now with these platforms like YouTube and Rumble and all these platforms to bring people together. Like, Paul, you're over there in England, and what time is it right now? Like 6 in the morning or something?
A minute
Like-
before 6 a.m. And you're so
Yeah.
right. It's people are taking control of their own destiny, and instead of having these middlemen just I don't know, just skimming off the top
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
making
your
exactly.
money.
Yeah, and changing your product, and then at the end of it, changing your vision, which I think, having those small time, oh no, not small time, but just having like a single researcher who has that passion and has that vision and wants to put it out for either the knowledge of it or the truth of it, or just for the fact that they work so hard and put out something that they're really proud of. When they bring it to these big time distributors, all they see is entertainment. That's all they care about.
Or money.
Or money.
How
Well,
are you going to make money?
entertainment equals money, right? So like they're trying to make it to where they want to make it to. It's like this big fun thing to watch, so that they draw views and they get money, and they don't care about your message, which is the main part of like a lot of the reason why people will put in so much effort into these very well made documentaries. Before they get
you're
butchered.
actually on the money. You're on the money with everything you've just said there, yeah. And they'll put their narrative on it. They'll put what they and it's restricting the public at large as well, because it's keeping them in that mindset that all of this is a joke, or should I say, in the past, that's what people have thought. But due to documentaries like Wolflands, and you talked about Small Town Monsters and other productions. I mean, I don't watch that much, if I'm being truthful. So you guys can sort of add to that. But what we've got is, with these productions, are real people telling real stories, and their accounts are put over how we would want them put over, and not how some person who's just after making a quick buck wants to put them over. So yeah, there's a massive place for this. We've started number 2 already, Josh. We're well on with it, and I'm really sort of pleased that you've said that it's something that you're going to venture into, and it's not a massive money making thing. We haven't even had any money from Amazon Prime yet. No doubt we will do, because it's been quite good on this top 100 chart that they've got. But it's same with the books, writing the Truth Proof books. They're on Kindle on Amazon, and they were on paperback, but now I sell them through the website. But there's no great. You're never going to be a millionaire out of this unless, I don't know, somebody sees something incredible in what we're doing. But there is a little bit of money to be made in it, but you're never going to be a millionaire. And jumping to that, Josh, you talked about the books, and I would send them here in the UK if anybody won the prize. We've also done DVDs of Wolflands. That might be worth letting you know about as well, Josh. So we were in process of a Blu-ray as well at the moment, but we thought DVDs were sort of old school and people wouldn't want them, but we're wrong. People do want them.
Yeah, people do want like a physical copy. I mean,
There's a couple things I wanted to say here. One of the things we touched on earlier is how your camera guy came to believe in this stuff. Now, Ken Gerhardt is very much at one time, I don't know what his views are exactly 100%, because people grow and change, and then, whatever. But I know when I last checked, he still was very much a flesh and blood Bigfoot guy. But helping me do some of the interviews with these people, with the Bigfoot Dogman stuff, he's come to the conclusion, and what he's told us, and he's said this publicly, that this stuff kind of scared him. The werewolf Dogman stuff, and interviewing witnesses with me, him and Barton Nunley helping out. They came to these conclusions, that these things are real. I mean, this isn't no joke, like if there was ever any doubt, talking to 40, 50 people about it, they know now, like, this is a real thing. This is not people just making stuff up. They're not just, oh, I saw something that looked, and they just made up a story. No. And you can kind of tell, like who's, what. And so
You-
that is a natural conclusion, and then you eventually you go on to become like accept and evolve as a person and
yeah.
accept the reality of these things. And I did that a long time ago. I went through that phase a long time ago when I had to accept that it was, because the final emotion you go through is acceptance. It starts with denial and ends with acceptance. And then you have all these people who have experienced these things, and now more than ever we're able to sit here and we're able to talk about it, and we're able to bring it to TV, we're able to bring it onto YouTube, we're able to talk, to write books about it. There's all of these different things, these different mediums that we can use, to talk to one another. And I think that it's only going to get bigger and get stronger, and people are making these videos and movies and stuff from their own backyards, like things that are happening in their own communities. And I think that it is very interesting, and we're getting to see like a growth in that. And that's what I want. I want to see people coming together and collaborating and making some amazing stuff. I am not a hater. I promise you, man. I hope, Paul Sinclair, you sell 1 million copies of those things, and I hope that you get the word out. Everybody go and check out Wolflands. I'm telling you right now, go. Paul Sinclair does amazing work. And I'm not saying that because he's on my show right now. I've always said this. Paul was always on the money, on point. He always brought his A game. I remember listening to him when he was on DER. He was one of the only people I ever listened to on there. And I thought that you were just on the level, on the money every time. And when we had our conversations, we were just back and forth, finishing each other's sentences, because we're on the same level, the same wavelength. And the other thing I wanted to say before we depart is I think the only way to go for all of us is up. I don't think that we're going to be derailed by the haters, and we're not going to let them affect us and let them. If people want to stay in their little comfort zones and their paradigms, let them stay there. You will never find what you're looking for. I'm just telling you that. I'm going to throw that out there. I give you my guarantee it's not going to happen. Okay? Some of these communities have had decades to find evidence of these different things, and they're not. That's stagnant. And until we can all work together as a community and come together and respect one another instead of attacking one another like some of these groups do, they're just dedicated toward attacking anyone who doesn't have the same viewpoint as them. Whereas I'm one of those people that goes out of my way to listen to everybody's viewpoint, whether I agree with it or not, or I think it's correct. But I do try to be very open-minded. But at the end of the day, there's so much, evidence that's circumstantial anyway, that just points us in a certain direction. And instead, these people kind of go toward it, and then they go around, and they keep going around in circles, and they'll do it for decades. And they and then they want to talk about they're critically thinking. No, you're not.
I mean, it's a critical.
No, you're not. You're critically failing, and you're going to continue to fail. And we're going to be sitting there, with people listening to us because we're on the right track, and they're not. And all they can do is gnash their teeth and talk crap.
Yeah, I mean,
you're absolutely. Sorry, you're absolutely spot on. Once again, in my opinion, because that's the thing. They're so entrenched in their belief system, in their way of thinking. This thing's flesh and blood, and it can't be anything else. Even though I've shot it with a 30-yard six, or I've heard an account of someone shooting it with a 30-yard six, and it stood there and just looked at me. That kind of tells you it's something different. It's something very different. And when you talked about other researchers, great personalities such as Ken Gerhard, who not necessarily have changed their mind fully, but they can see that there's something else happening. That's the trait of a good researcher. And all of us, the people in the chat here today, we're all researchers in our own right. But don't become entrenched in your own belief system. Leave it open. Like Josh says, you might not agree with what everybody says, but there might be a grain of truth, a grain of something within what's being said that fits into your jigsaw puzzle, that fits into your narrative on what you believe. So I think we can all learn from each other rather than fight with each other. So great words there from all your team, Josh.
yeah, I mean, exactly. As we all learned here today, you can learn something from anybody, no matter what age or who they are. And I think the moment that we'll be able to say as a community we're moving forward and we're on the right track is that once we get rid of all the people who are in it to be right instead of trying to find the truth. And Ken, I think, thankfully you brought him up, is such a great example because he has such strong views in the opposite direction of all of us, but he's on the right track of wanting to find the truth, not wanting to be right. So he's more than willing to listen to other people's views and in fact even change his own views because he understands that like he doesn't know everything. He's not sure if he's correct on what he believes. He believes a certain way because of his experience up to that point, but your experiences up to that point don't stop at that point. So like you should always be changing. You should always be adapting. You should always be having new ideas come towards you so that you can change your own ideas and make sure that you are walking towards the right path. And that was a great example of someone who does that. And it makes me respect him all the more because he does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should actually be grateful. Like if you believe something and it's actually proven wrong, I think as a sincere researcher, you should actually be grateful for that because every time something that you previously believed is proven wrong, then that means you're one step closer to finding what's actually right.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day,
Agreed.
that's all that matters.
Don't get bitter. Don't get bitter. Just absorb it and move on and think, yeah, we'll go in that direction now. Spot on.
Mhm.
I got one question before we leave because Phil Stern, who was in my book, and he keeps asking in the chat. Okay. He wanted to know if you had any stories from Dalby Forest.
Absolutely. Did you say Phil Stern?
Yeah, Phil.
I Phil. Absolutely. Dalby Forest is literally within, in some instances, a mile of all of these forests. And like I said earlier, Phil, I don't know whether you listened to the entirety of what we've been talking about. They're only separated by name. So Dalby Forest. Then you've got Howard Dale. Then you've got Broxer. So yes, we've got cryptid stories from Dalby Forest, the Bigfoot phenomena, the Dogman stroke werewolf phenomena. The gamekeeper I spoke about in 2002. The forest he was in is 7 miles, maybe 8 miles from Dalby Forest. What's interesting, Phil, is that back then, 2002, he was there in 1997 till 2002. Excuse me. In 1999, there was a series of animal fatalities, mutilations, done by something that they could never put a finger on what were doing it because it had got the MO of some kind of not normal predator. There's facial strips, ears removed, eyes removed, and I don't need to paint any bigger picture than that. But what I'm saying is, what he didn't realize back then, there was a prolific researcher, a retired police inspector, Tony Dodd, who was actively researching in Dalby Forest, looking for strange animals, strange cryptid type creatures, looking into the animal fatalities and the human fatalities in Dalby Forest, which were all in unusual circumstances. Incidentally, we've touched on it in Wolflands. That's just a segment that we've put in because it connects with the gamekeepers' time there, even though never the two met. I mean, there's Tony Dodd back in the day searching for answers, searching for witnesses in these remote areas. And he never knew that 7 to 8 miles away, there's a young gamekeeper who's actually having these experiences. And it's took him till 2020 contacting me to actually start talking about these things openly. So to answer your question, Phil, a little bit, yes, there's lots of reports from Dalby Forest, the light form phenomena, the cryptid phenomena, and animal mutilations, and I'll just leave it at human fatalities in Dalby, and it's all there. Yeah, all the ingredients.
Yeah. So, folks, that's all the time we have with Paul Sinclair. But Paul, thank you for coming on. We've been talking about it, and we were trying to coordinate it and get it done. I'll be stopping in every now and then and saying hi on your channel. I like to watch when I can.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you guys do a great job. And if you're interested in doing anything with the UAP project that I'm going to be doing, interviewing a multitude of people about their thoughts on the aerial phenomena, alien phenomena, whatever, let me know and we can record.
Count me in. Yeah. Count me in. I would love to. Just I don't want to take too much of your time, Josh, but can I just say that we also do a live stream, UK, every Thursday, 7 p.m., Truth Proof live stream. Just look at that on YouTube, and we're going to start a question and answer this coming Monday. I think that's 7 p.m. Well, I don't know if we've fixed a time there yet, but Josh, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to share some views, talk about the documentary, and just spend time with you guys. It's been a pleasure.
No, honestly, Phil. I mean, Paul. Honestly, Paul.
It's been such a pleasure, Moose. You can't even remember your name.
It's such a pleasure. I don't know who you are. Hey, Phil.
I don't
I
know
get
who
you guys
are,
mixed
but
up
it's been
all
a
the
pleasure.
time. I'll be honest.
No,
But honestly,
seriously,
it was an honor to have you on. It has been such a great conversation, and honestly, all of us here have just been sitting and listening to you speak because you have such a wealth of knowledge, and you do it so well. So I'm sure people, if you go check out his podcast, you'd love it just as much because I've been sitting here just listening when you speak.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and if you want to subscribe to Phil Sinclair's channel, it's the link to it is pinned at the top of the live chat. So go give our friend Phil here some love. Subscribe to his channel. We want to see his subscriber numbers go up.
Yes. Phil is German. Paul is English. Okay.
That would be brilliant. I'm never coming on again now you've called me Phil.
Oh no!
No, seriously,
I'll
guys,
just go get
honestly,
Paul Stein
I
on
love the way. Honestly, they say sarcasm's the lowest form of wit. It's the most effective. It's brilliant, and I just love having a laugh with people. And you guys, you take it seriously, but you can also add a fun element, and that's why your channel's successful. I believe it's great.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you so much. Well, you have a good, I guess I was going to say night. You have a good day. Good day.
Will do, my friend. I'm going to a cup of warm tea now, I think, or coffee, and I shall leave you guys to it. Have you done asking me things? Are we good to go?
We're done asking you, Phil. Okay.
All good.
All
Okay,
right,
my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, yeah, that was Paul Sinclair, not Phil. Phil Stern, Paul Sinclair. Both of them are, I guess, PS.
That's why I get them confused.
Yeah, even though one starts with a Phil and the other one's a Paul, but that's fine. We'll let you have it. So, folks, that's Paul Sinclair. Go check out Wolflands and get you a head start on checking out Eric Palacio's documentary on Amazon too, The Beast of Brushy Creek, because he's going to be coming on the show and we're going to talk about that because we have reports of that creature. And when I was talking to him, it was really...
Yeah, you guys were talking for like 2 hours.
Yeah, it was a really good conversation. And it all started out with a FOIA that he was going to put on the Paranormal Roundtable. I suggested him not do it because it was going to create problems. It was about the LBL. And if he wants to talk about that when he comes on the show, it's up to him. But every time we talk about that, on the LBL, it's people have very strong opinions about it. I just didn't want to start a firestorm. I'm always at the middle of some firestorm. People are like, you're always fighting with somebody. There's people to fight with. And it's not because I'm a jerk. You will see there's a method to the madness. I'm trying to get us away from these malcontents who aren't interested in working together, who don't want to play nice, and they're not interested in you and what you think or whatever. They just want to make a name for themselves and be heard. And they don't care how ridiculous their stuff is. And believe me, some of it is absolutely asinine. And I can only tolerate so much ignorance, and I'm just like, but when you talk to somebody like Paul Sinclair, he brings a lot of clarity. And I really, really am glad that Aaron Deese's book came out at the same time mine did. And it just doubles up and validates what we've been saying for all these years. I'm like Zarkov on Flash Gordon. I've been right all these years. Look, I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to just, show you, hey, this is the way. I'm telling you, there's all these people out there that are going to, just like I said, they're going to gnash their teeth or others are going to jump for joy. But the facts are the facts, and it doesn't change it, and you can scream until your eyeballs bleed. It's not going to change the truth. The truth is the truth, and it always comes to the top where it belongs, and everything else just falls by the wayside. You have to do your own research. You don't have to take my word for it, okay? But I'm not going to steer you wrong. And yeah, I make mistakes sometimes, and people love to pounce and whatever. and people wait in the wings for me to fail, that's not going to happen. Okay, you're going to be holding your breath, and you're just going to pass out and go unconscious. Okay, stop holding your breath and waiting for PRT to fail, because there's all these people who've told me, Anthony, Tony, and all of us, yeah, we're going to be there when you guys fall. And it's like, well, that hasn't happened yet. Okay, we're going on 5 years now, and we're not falling.
Well, and the thing is, I think these people don't understand is that we're not the type to fall and just let it be done. We'll get back up. I mean, I think we all, I think, can say that we enjoy doing this, and it's actually really enjoyable and fun. So I see no reason to stop just because some people out there want us to.
Yeah, there are people who want to. Like, I get screenshots from people, my spy network, as they call it, my cult members. They're not cult members. They're just genuinely concerned about me, and they'll send me screenshots of the nasty, mean things that people say in these groups. And you know what I do? I just laugh. And my wife, she's so sweet. She'll be like, "Oh, honey, it's okay. You're not that." And I'm like, I know I'm not. I know I'm not a poo-poo caca head. My head is not made of poo-poo or caca. It is not. Mary McCheese's head is made of cheese and hamburger meat.
Oh, I thought it was made of Doritos.
My head is not, okay? So you can call me a poo-poo caca head, doesn't make it true. All right? Go call somebody else that's really that way. And so, what these people do, though, and I'm gonna tell you this, and you're gonna think that I'm being snarky, because I am. All you're doing is giving me conviction and making me stronger. All these little comments and things you do, I just feel more motivated every day to wake up with 4 or 5 hours of sleep and keep doing what I do. And that's true, guys, sitting across from me.
I mean, it literally happened. The first conference we had, you were honestly thinking about just taking a break, permanently maybe, or just for a little
writing.
bit. Yeah, just writing. You're focusing on it. And then it was these people, these haters, these people that won't stop. They were the ones that were like, okay, they brought us back in. They made us we were like, okay, we're not going to stop, because that's going to make you too happy. And so we kept going, and we're still going, and so your anger just fuels us, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. You're not going to make me maneuver me into making a mistake. And most of these haters, if you're not the guy that me and Paul we went on his show, if he can't do it, what makes you think you're going to do it? I mean, that guy's got a huge following, and they're very cult-like. The Hot Pockets are very strong. I mean, they really are. I got to give them that much credit and respect. They're a powerful group of foolish people, but they're still very powerful. And they couldn't derail me, and it's not going to happen. I will be where we need to be. We're going to be at the top. We're cruising toward 30,000 now. We're flirting with 28,000?
Yeah.
On YouTube, and we have tens of thousands on our other platforms. I'm not worried, okay? People are like, "Oh, don't let the haters get to you." Your hate keeps me warm. Keep it coming, because it's fuel for me to do what I need to do and move us into this next level. I kind of need it. I need somebody sometimes to light a fire under my ass, because sometimes I get kind of complacent, But when you get hit in the mouth, then you're in a fight. Then you start fighting, and that's when I do my best work. So go ahead, keep it up. Make your threats and make your stupid little comments and your little snarky whatever, because I'm on the right track, and I know that my allies are on the right track, and that's why you're so sweating. That's why you're sweating. That's why you're freaking out, because your time is short. I have all the time in the world. It's going to only go up and get better, and these people, they're going to fall by the wayside. You know what's going to happen? They're going to be a footnote in history. Nobody's going to remember your name. The people that go out, the men of enterprise, the ones that go into the world and do what needs to be done, they're the ones that are going to be remembered. You ever seen that movie, Troy? Where he's like, I wouldn't fight that guy. And
Troy is in...
What's his name? Played Achilles, which I think Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
Troy.
But
Achilles wasn't a pretty boy.
Kelly was not a pretty boy. He was like, 6'5", 400 pounds. But he tells him, he's like, that's why no one's going to remember your name, because you won't fight that guy. People will always remember the ones that are taking the risk takers, the riverboat gamblers, the people who go out of their way. I come out here to do a live stream. Whatever I say is just broadcast into YouTube land, and anybody and everybody can watch it. And I crack a joke and it doesn't land. Oh well, it's out there for everyone to see. There'll be like 12,000 people who will watch that, and if you want to say, hey, or at least for now, sometimes we get more. 15. Some of these, podcast episodes have hit 40, 50,000. It's out there, and so people go onto Reddit and they say all kinds of crap and they do all kinds of whatever. What are you doing? One person I know admitted that they work at Target. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad job to have, that people go and work, you do what you do. But this person also said they try not to. I'm going to say this. They said they try not to work more than 14 to 16 hours a week.
What?
Yeah.
How do you eat?
Yes.
How do you live?
So I get this message.
What do you do at Target? Live
They
there?
probably live with their parents. But you have all this time to watch me and hate on me and say all the crap that you say while you work at Target 14, 16 hours a week.
I mean,
Now, that gives you a lot of downtime to do all the stupid things that you do and to troll me, okay? But until you're actually putting in some real work somewhere, you're never going to be anywhere in this world. You're just going to be where you're at, a little hater, and I'm not going to say your names. I'm not going to give you any publicity. But when you said that that's how much you work and that I'm a fool for getting 5 hours of sleep and working every day, they're like, literally, that's like, and then they couldn't even do math. Get this, 21 hours a week. I said 5 hours. There's 24 hours in a day, dumbass. Okay? Last I checked, anyway, unless the Mandela effect changed that.
That's like
So-
40 hours a week, right?
I was sitting there and I was laughing so hard. I was like, what? I laughed so hard. You guys sleep upstairs. I'm surprised y'all didn't hear me bellowing, laughing. I was like, this person tried to argue with me, and I was like, I actually entertained just because they were so stupid. And I showed a few people, but it's not worth. I don't want anybody to give this person any airtime. But it was unbelievable that they said and I said, you said 14 to 16 hours a week, and they said yes, a week, and their response was because I'm smart. That's their response. And while they're telling me how stupid I am for doing all the work that I'm doing, and they're like, you're making money, you can't take it with you. I'm like, dude. This isn't about making money. This is about knowledge. This is about wisdom. Okay? It's about actually caring for the betterment and the future of humanity. This person works at Target. Please pray for them. I'm being serious. That person needs prayer. Those people, they are not right in their minds. Something is wrong with them. If you think that is where you need to be, I don't care how old you are, and I'm pretty sure they're young, but if that's what you're doing with yourself and that's your aspirations, oh boy.
I mean, if you work anywhere at any job and all you work is 14 to 16 hours a week, I mean,
It's not even a
that's
job.
that's.
It's more like a hobby at that point.
I mean, you're dabbling in work, and I don't know. I can't relate to you. I'm sorry. And
Alright.
most people who actually know what it's like to be responsible and pay bills and just be a functioning
Or just have
human
a
being
job.
can't
Yeah.
relate. So you should probably be able
Or
to
have
relate to
sympathy
people
for you.
before you start criticizing them.
Well, and the whole conversation started because I didn't tell their story, which obviously when you only work 14 hours a week, you have lots of time to write stories. And I was like, the story, I'm just going to be very blunt. It was not something that y'all are going to want to hear. It was boring. It was like something was moving shopping carts. Okay. And, something like that. And I was just like, no offense, but I asked them if there was more to it, and they're like, "No, dumbass." They call me that, and I'm like, come on, don't you're gonna talk to me that way? If you send me a story, I already gave it to someone else, and they're gonna do something with it. No, they probably put it in their trash box where it belonged, and you talk trash, and then they get upset, and they're like, "That's why you and your show are gonna fail." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you for that prediction. Duly noted. Now I will go on with my life doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and you keep working at Target for 14, 16 hours a week. I'm sure there's a lot of Mountain Dew being drank in your mom's basement while you're playing Call of Duty 22 or whatever number they're on, and you are very successful at that and probably smoking lots of dank, killer. All right? Have fun with yourself while I do things with people that matter. That's the bottom line. So, that's the difference right there. That's the kind of people that are hating on us. So, who cares? Who gives a crap? Now if this person had a video game channel, or something that was,
He could be
that
doing anything.
that's different. But I mean, from what I could tell, and like I said, I'm not putting them on blast because I'm not going to do that. But this is the level of people we're dealing with, who want to correct me and tell me that I'm full of crap.
Yeah, they don't realize it's
Not
plain,
worried.
plain and simply. One day we're still be known as PRT, and you'll just be known as a hater of PRT. You won't even have.
He won't be known at all.
You won't
Well,
be
I mean,
known at
he
all.
won't be known, but he'll just be known as a hater. Like that's it.
Wow.
That's as far as that he'll get in this. Instead of trying to make himself something. Like if he actually just made a channel, told stories, and actually rose to actually compete with us and got to our level, and then criticize us, I would be a little bit more understanding. I'd be like, okay, I would like to hear your insight on this because you have, you made
Sure.
something of yourself. But if you're just some Joe Schmo, literally working at Target, barely. I'm not saying that you don't have correct criticism, but when you have nothing but hate and you're just angry at us because we don't do certain things the way you want to, who are you to really speak to us that way? I mean, we're still humans here. We're all adults. We're all grown men. You don't have the right to speak to us that way. The way we do things has been working for us, obviously. We're not going to change just because you wanted it to, because you think you might have a better way. Then do it. Plain and simple. If there
Well, this
is
person
one.
said I wasn't taking advice. No, I wasn't taking advice from them.
Yeah.
Like the kind of people that I take advice from are, guys who are like have huge shows, followings.
Or have listened to our shows for
Yeah.
.
I was given advice, very sound advice, from bigger, stronger podcasters when I was coming up, and I took it and I did. Hey, you know what? You're right. Let me try something to do this and do that. Work on the thumbnails or whatever you got to do. If you're an aspiring podcaster, that's what you got to do. The guys from Expanded Perspectives, Josh and Doug from What Lurks Beneath, Dark Waters, who's recently surpassed DER as in views and whatever subscribers. You got guys like that who give you some advice. Maybe you should listen. Maybe you should just take Steve Stockton, various people who've given me advice over the years, and then when I wrote the books, listening to authors because they have written books. And now when I go into the documentaries, I'm going to have to listen to the people who've done it before because they have done it. You don't have to blaze a trail that's already been blazed for you. You don't have to be a rebel, a maverick, or whatever. It's already been done. All you can do is just try to improve on it. And I think that it's healthy to have competition, and it's healthy for all of us to be doing our best, because if someone is over there and they're listening to someone else over you, then you need to improve on whatever it is that you're doing. Now, sometimes you're just not somebody's cup of tea, but if it's a large group that is listening to them and not you,
for a specific
instead
reason.
of hating on those guys, instead of being like, oh, I don't like Josh Inoki, I don't like Tony Merkel, I don't like these guys because they're better than me or they're doing better than me, then you need to get better and improve your damn self. That's what you need to do. And instead of that, people are like, well, let's go and chop them down at the knees, and so they come down, and I could stay being a crusty bag of crap. And that's not what you need to do. And so that's my rant for tonight. I just think that we all need to do better. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing right. If you're going to bother with doing something, do it correctly. I mean, some of these people, I don't think they would even clean their backside correctly if they just, wouldn't bother, because they're too lazy to do that, but then they'll criticize you about your show. And so don't do it. Do not. But I know what you were going to say. Oh, man. But I don't think he probably won't like
That's
that.
why I said no.
Okay. But that's my thing. And I believe that, Jason, raise the bar. We need to raise the bar. Samuel Lemon, improve self. And JoJo, you're raising the bar at PRT. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what we're supposed to be doing. My job here is to bring you quality guests, get the stories that people give us, go through them and give you the information and pull the threads that need to be pulled so that you can either learn something or be entertained or both. That is what we're here to do. Now, that being said, there are a lot of people who are out there taking up your time, taking up your energy, and they ain't giving you crap back, man. I mean, they are literally filling people's heads full of junk, and they are taking away, compartmentalization is taken away from it. They're taking it away. And we're trying to stop that. So, folks, thank you for tuning in tonight.
Whoa, what about the Broken Wheel of Dreams?
Oh, that's right. We want to give away.
Yeah. All right, guys, you know the deal.
We
If
don't
you
need to
haven't,
do the will, we just need to pick somebody.
yeah, if you haven't won anything yet, and you'd like to,
Raise
we're
your
gonna
hand.
raise your hand. Basically, just I want to see a hand, and we'll choose a couple names to give some stuff to.
Shade Viking.
Actually, at the at the beginning of the live stream, I think Alan, if I'm saying it right, Surgeoner, he said that he had actually won a giveaway, but he hasn't gotten his stuff yet or something. If you could reiterate that, that way you can remind us. And let's see.
Guy Man Dude, have you won? Don't lie, Guy Man Dude.
We'll find out,
We'll find out and we'll punish you.
and your present will be us attacking you.
Your suffering will be legendary.
You open the
Even in
vault.
hell.
You raised your hand. So Brianna L says I never won. So we got Brianna L.
Gwen Hunt has like
Guy
7
Man
hands
Dude.
there, so I don't.
No, sir, but he spelled sir wrong. So, Bob Barker, yeah, that's weird. Send Dogman if they like. So who do we got here? Who do you guys want to pick? Brianna L's saying and got to pick somebody. We're going to try and mail off either tomorrow or Monday, too. So, Brooks, if you're out there, we still know that we owe you, and we still have a few people we need to mail off for the Patreon. If you're listening to this, whether it's a replay or if it's live, do us a favor, and if you haven't gotten anything from us and you feel like you're owed something because we told you at some point, email me or message me so that I can put it all down. We'll go through it this weekend. We'll get it done.
You guys got some names? How are we doing this? One each, or?
I mean, I saw Guy Man Dude and Brianna L. But Guy Man Dude, do you want to win? Because you said
no.
yes, sir. Like I don't know how that
Well, he spelled it the way they spell it in the Game of Thrones books. It's
Yeah, I was gonna
SER.
say like
Is
it
that what
looked
it
like
is?
90
Yeah.
or like.
Okay, we'll give you that one. So I'll say Guy Man Dude for me and Brianna L. That's what I choose those two. I'm gonna do the choosing tonight, and those two are. So, guys, I tell you what, we're gonna give you T-shirts. Send me your information, your shirt size, and we'll have it out to you.
It's gonna be right there at the bottom left.
JF, he says, is this PRT clearinghouse? You're correct, huh? Oh, wait a minute. He never did the Publishers Clearinghouse in this timeline.
Yeah.
You know?
But so to tonight's winners, make sure you send an email. The email address is at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. It's Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. Oh, hang on. Now it's at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And just send us your mailing address, your shirt size, your name. Just say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I won last night's giveaway. This is my mailing address. This is my shirt size.
Yeah, and so patreon.com/PRT podcast. Go join $20, $30, $40, $50 tier. It's all good. You get stuff, okay? And you help support the show and you help us keep doing what we're doing. And eventually we are trying to build that war chest so that we can make our documentary/docuseries. So that is our next goal. We're going to keep moving, keep doing what we're doing. We also have a pretty cool board game that my wife has designed.
I walked in and it
saw
looked
it?
so cool.
Dude, she was showing me. And then Adrian, his brother. Anyway, we're going to talk about it.
We don't want to get too
We're
much
not gonna
away,
get
but
too
be
far
excited.
ahead.
Nellie's putting
Very
a lot of
excited.
work
Nellie
into
is
it.
phenomenal at this. She said that she used to do this when I'm going to be wrong on this. I'm going to plug her for a minute here. She said when I was young, I used to make games for my siblings and this and that. And I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. Then she started making it and I saw her plugging away on it. And I was like, this actually looks kind of fun. So now she's almost done and I'm ready to like play it and see how it comes out. And folks, if we can get it off the ground, it is going to be an incredible game. It's going to not only boost PRT, the brand, but I think it's going to stand alone on its own in these game stores. I think it's going to be an epic game. It's going to be like playing a game you may not even know that it's about. Paranormal Roundtable.
That's awesome.
But it's going to be cool, you know. So we got some things in the works, and I'm going to have some of the most incredible interview / discussions coming up. I'm going to be recording.
Yeah, I was
with
just
people.
about to say, like, I saw you put in a lot of work. I wanted to mention it at the start, but I forgot to. Like, you guys should be really prepared because Wolf has been putting a lot of work into these Thursdays episodes, and he's been getting them all ready for it. He's been talking to a lot of people, and he's had it down for like many months now to where back-to-back content, a lot of good guests, a lot of good speaking points, a lot of good information being discussed, and you guys should just definitely be excited and prepared for that.
Yeah, because we've been talking to a lot of people and collaborating and talking and just trying to get, you know, we have so many allies now, dude. These people that are coming at me, they're just, it's so stupid. I mean, it's almost like, what's it, Monty Python's, what's it called, the Holy Grail, where they run up to the castle and hit it with their sword and run away. It's really that stupid now. You know, you guys, the paratroopers, I got you guys. You're my shock troops. I don't need these, whatever. We're a cult now, remember, right? We're a cult, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, just kidding, folks.
John
Anyway,
Jones, Jim Jones, whoever.
Jimmy Jones,
Jimmy Jones.
Jimmy Jones, Jim Jones,
Yeah.
and then they're calling me Jerry Jones from
Yeah.
the Cowboys. Oh well, it's like Ken said. I mean, you know, was it Ken that said that? He said Jerry Jones is successful.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like it's funny how that's
okay.
an insult.
And Jim Jones, you have to say he was a charismatic leader, okay? At the very least, okay?
Yeah,
You can't
I mean,
deny.
you got to give credit where credit is due.
You
he
can't
made
deny
that Kool-Aid
Hicks'
very
charisma.
tasty, or nobody
Can't-
would have drank it.
Can't make people do all that stuff without having some leadership skills. That's all I'm saying. All right, the guy was still crazy.
Yeah, but anyways, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on Sunday. I love it. Tomorrow night, you're basically going to get PRT again because I'm going to be over at Bettina Moss's channel having a party with her and Abe C's. We're going to talk about a lot of crazy stuff, and you know, there we go. It's going to be fun, and we're going to talk tomorrow night. She said around 8 o'clock or so, 8:30. She's going to get started, and I'm going to show up about 9, fashionably late, and I have to go eat dinner with some friends. But then we'll get taken care of. And Brooks, I haven't forgotten. We got you. You know, we got your stuff. Just make sure you message me back so that I can, you know, keep it queued up in my phone so I can remember. So that's it for tonight, folks. Thank you for everything. We love you. I love you guys so much. I cannot tell you how much I care about my fans and my listeners. Even if you don't want to, hey, I'm not a fan. I just listen. Well, you're a listener, and I appreciate that. Appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you so much, and good night. We'll see you tomorrow night on
Bettina.
with Bettina Moss, Crypto Normal. What's it called?
I think it's a Crypto Normal Encounters with B Moss.
Yeah.
Crypto Normal Encounters with B Moss. Be there or be square. That sounds so corny, right? But still, be there
Or be rectangle.
or be a rectangle. Be obtuse triangle. Anyways, folks, you get what I'm saying. And then we'll be back Sunday with a whole bunch of stories, and then we'll be back again Tuesday. This coming Tuesday. It's going to be epic. It's going to be off the chain. We got some Dogman versus people fighting back. It's crazy.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Then Thursday, we also are having our first interview. So
We're having our first interviews. Thank you so much for everything, folks, and good night.